Sacred Symbols is sponsored by Tommy John and their maximally comfortable clothing for men and women. Get 20% off your first purchase at TommyJohn.com/sacred right now for Valentine's Day. That's TommyJohn.com/SACRED. Hurry to TommyJohn.com/sacred for 20% off. Again, that's TommyJohn.com/sacred. See site for details. Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast, is brought to you by, well, you. If you want to learn how to support our show, go to patreon.com/laststandmedia. Greetings and salutations. Welcome back to Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast. This is episode number 238. My name is Colin Moriarty. I'm joined as always by my son, Chris Raygun, with his Skyrim shirt on. Are you wearing that in ode of Bethesda's recent bad news? Some layoffs over there, sad news.
Yeah.
Are you kind of trying to give them a little positive energy?
Yeah, I definitely thought about this really well in advance, and I'm definitely not at the end of a laundry cycle.
Fair enough. Did you sell everything in your background here? Now you have there's nothing in the back. There was like things in the back. Maybe it was just a green screen. Maybe it was always like this in your background. Yeah.
I haven't changed it. I haven't really changed it that much. I would have like my camera up there, like maybe on a tripod or whatever sometimes.
Right.
But same room.
Cool, man. Well, I want to be clear. I know it's the same room. There's just something a little peculiarly different about it. I can't put my finger on it. It doesn't matter. Dustin Furman, executive producer. How are you today, my friend?
I'm doing all right. Before we started recording, Colin and I were discussing, I was worried that maybe you guys got raptured or something, like I was Nick Cage in Left Behind. Because it was 1:03, I think, before Chris showed up. And this is highly abnormal. But it's fine. I don't want people to think I'm like being nitpicky about being on the timeliness of when you guys show up. It was just different. So I thought maybe you guys were gone and I was left alone.
If only.
Permanently. Damn.
No, we're here. I actually got distracted playing. You know what one of my favorite songs to play on the drums right now is James. I think it's Charles and James. It was like this random 90s group, and it's called Would I Lie to You? You would definitely know the song. People out there, if they heard from it. It's so fun to play on the drums. So I was playing that, and then I went into Just Because by Jane's Addiction and got kind of distracted by that. And then I looked at my phone. I was like, oh, shit. It's like 102 or 103. I got to get going here.
Yeah.
Because I got I don't know if people will be able to see them, but I got like these industrial headphones like that. They're not even for musicians. They're for like, doing yard work, and they cut down like 45 decibels. And then on the inside, there's enough room where you can put an earbud. I was talking to my friend, my best friend Ramon, who does all of our music, and he's a traveling musician. And I was telling him it's so different than when I was young playing the drums, because you either had to have like your shitty headphones on to try to hear something to play along with, and you couldn't hear anything, and then you fuck your hearing up, or you had to wear headphones and there was no way to hear anything other than the drums. And having not played in so long, and then having this, just it's a small revelation with the earbud. So I was very excited about that. So I've been playing along to all sorts of things. It's a lot of fun. I'm sure my neighbors are thrilled about it. But
I'm glad you're taking care of your hearing. I recently majorly fucked up with that. When I went to that Iron Maiden concert in October, my ears are still very, very mildly fucked up from that.
Interesting.
So tiny bit of ringing.
Playing drums when I started playing drums in middle school, I didn't wear hearing protection at all. And and into high school, and I have no idea how I didn't get away with fucked up hearing. But yeah, in college, I started wearing, like, my dad had these old headphones. I started wearing them, look like the guitarist in Linkin Park. You know what I'm talking about? Those big ass headphones.
Yeah.
And then, and so I had that for a while, but concerts, I don't give a shit. I don't go with the ear protection in. I want it as loud and as muddy as possible.
Dude, that's what I thought too, man.
That's the most important place to bring ear protection is concerts specifically.
Oh, no way. Put me in front of the stacks and let's fucking get going.
You'll feel different when you hear ringing every night.
You got tinnitus.
You lay in bed, you'll miss the silence.
I mean, I always, whenever I get home from a show, I can't hear anything. You know? Yeah, like everyone knows that feeling when you're in bed after a show and all you hear is like, you feel like you're in a dome, like your head's in a dome or something.
Yeah.
Well, here's the thing. That's exactly what happened to me, and what has always happened. It's like, okay, 1 or 2 days, maybe you feel a little ringing. And then this time it just didn't, it diminished, but it never fully went away. And about 5 days later, you say, oh no, what have I done?
Yeah, you're getting old.
So, be careful.
That reminds me of like one of the first shows I went to, it was like a Day to Remember and Rise Against, and like we just went with no ear protection. We were at like the front basically, and then we went to a diner at like 2 a.m. and we didn't realize that we were screaming at each other in the diner because our like internal like volume modulation was just so out of whack because of the show. It's fun.
Well, everyone take care of your hearing. I don't know how we even got into this conversation, but it was the drumming and it was the music and all of these things. Well, my friends, it's good to be here with you. It's good to be here with all of you out there. Thank you for joining us for Sacred Symbols, our weekly PlayStation podcast. You can get it early and ad-free by going to Patreon at patreon.com/laststandmedia, like more than 12,300 of you are right now. The best tier is the $5 tier, no doubt, in my opinion, for the newcomers, but you can join at $1, $2, $5, $10, and $25. Get all sorts of different perks, including early ad-free access, the ability to submit questions, comments, concerns, thoughts, and ideas to the show, access to Sacred Symbols Plus, our supplemental podcast twice a week, which is only for Patreon. We occasionally release one of those on YouTube for people to listen to for free. So we appreciate your support over there. Please listen to Constellation and go on iTunes and Spotify, whatever, and subscribe, leave nice reviews. That's our new conversational podcast, doing awesome in the top 10 of leisure on iTunes, which is huge. I mean, that's huge. We're amongst... Now, I know how I've done this long enough to know how the algorithm works. When you're getting lots of new subscriptions and lots of new reviews, it's going to boost you. Where I will be curious to see where we land with that. But thank you so much for that. And go check out the Clips channel if you want. Sacred Symbols Plus, like I said, goes twice a week. We're doing the Last of Us HBO series. We did, I don't know, like almost 100 minutes, I think, on the first episode with Dagan and Ben and Dustin. And that was a lot of fun. We're going to have Chris on, I think, hopefully soon. We're going to have a few other people kind of rotating in, I think, as well. So that's going to be great. We're going to leave the Last of Us conversation mostly to Sacred Symbols Plus, although we'll get to it in a minute about our overall stuff. Fantasy Draft just went up for Metacritic. Yes, I won. Of course I won, but we've selected all of our games again, and we have that in play. We have recent spoiler cast and review discussions for the Callisto Protocol, Crisis Core, Trails of Cold Steel. I'm sure we'll do one for Dead Space Remake. I'm sure we'll do one for... I don't know if we'll do one for Forspoken. It depends on who plays it. Really depends. We'll have those continuing to come. Thank you so much. And merch at laststandmedia.store. Okay. Let's get into some news, some small things that we need to talk about. Actually, a pretty big thing at first. Rick Hogue. I've spoken to Rick Hogue himself. I've been speaking, obviously, to his wife pretty much daily. For those that don't know, Rick Hogue had a stroke in December. He is now rehabilitating, able to speak to me, or at least text to me. I don't know the full extent of what's going on with him. But getting daily updates still, and everything seems to be going okay there. Thank you so much for supporting Rick, following his wife on Twitter for updates, supporting him on GoFundMe. I think he raised something like $120,000 or something of this nature, which will help with his rehabilitation bills. Because, of course, in America, we have horrible health insurance, good medical care, but you got to be able to access it. So thank you for supporting our friend Rick. Okay. Joseph LaRusso wrote into us on Patreon. Let's get into it. He said, "Hello, Sacreds. You regularly call out unique, interesting, and or weird locations that people have listened to Sacred Symbols. Well, I've got one for you, a new one. Someone has officially listened to Sacred Symbols in Istanbul, Turkey, while in the middle of a hair transplant operation. Yes, that's right. I, your humble writer, traveled from Florida to Istanbul for a hair transplant last week, and I listened to the majority of Sacred Symbols 236 while on the operating table, having hair follicles from the back and sides of my head implemented on the front and top. Be grateful for what you got, boys, because you don't know what you got till it's gone." I'm low-key a little afraid of losing my hair. I actually have no evidence of that happening yet. In fact, people talk about how good my hairline is, although you can't really tell right now because I haven't shaved my head in a long time, but I'll probably do that really soon and you guys will see. But when that starts retreating, which inevitably I assume it will, I'm gonna be troubled. But so far, apparently, I've talked, everyone, looks at it and they're like, "Hey, you're doing fine, I think." My brother's doing okay, which would be a good. The problem is my dad looks like fucking Benjamin Franklin, right? So I don't know what's going to happen there. But what do you think about this?
Colin?
Yeah, please.
About this. So I've thought about this because recently with my hair being longer, I've wondered if I'm starting to get a little thinner on top. And then comes the question is that there are, you can get various prescriptions or whatever to kind of, if you start it early, it's supposed to make it not happen. And I've thought about this because I really like having hair, but at the same time, there's some part of me that thinks getting on a prescription in order to stop the natural course of your body feels vain. But I also am kind of like, but I like having hair. I feel like it's part of my identity. You know what I mean? Or how I look. So I've thought about that. Like if it really starts to go, would I be willing to try something like that? And I don't have an answer. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I guess so. I don't know. I feel like I haven't seen any evidence that my hair is falling out yet, so I haven't really. Because I assume you start seeing some of it in the shower and like I don't know, you start or seeing just looking at yourself, and I don't see any evidence of that. But yeah, I think that's cool. I mean, that's totally fine. It probably works. It reminds me a lot, to be perfectly honest with you, of my old coworker Nick Scarpino, who was completely obsessed with his hair and losing his hair. And he would often, I think, talk about it on the shows about how he would just do everything possible to make sure, because he was very well known for his hair as well. Looked great. So I don't know. I just think it's I've thought about if I would do this. And I think the answer is you have to do it if you catch it early enough. You can't like let it go and then do it. Right. And I don't know. Like, I'm 38. I'm going to be 39 in October. So later this year, I mean, a long time now, but it's like that this is kind of the natural way of things. Also, my hair sucks. That's the big thing, that my hair is just an Italian afro. You can see it. Like, you can't do anything with it. People used to tell me, oh, do this and do that. You can't do anything with it.
Yeah,
it just grows.
Yeah.
And then you cut it off.
Rigid hair.
Right.
Well, to clarify, if someone told me they were on a prescription for their hair, I'd be like, oh, that's cool. Like, it's no problem when I think about someone else. So really, I should just apply it to myself. That's like, hey, if you want to keep your hair, just do it. Don't worry about it.
Fair enough.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't really get it personally. Like, I guess it's like, you know, do whatever you want, I guess. But like, to me, it's just like, hair is just something to maintain. And if I had an excuse to just not have to worry about that, you know what I mean? Like, I feel like it's like, oh my God, the freedom of that. Because every time people like shave their head, they're like, oh, it feels amazing. I've never done it.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I shave my head all the time. Yeah.
I mean, I used to do it. My dad used to, like, when I was like a kid, I would usually get like that military kind of like buzz cut thing, just because it's just what my dad had. And it was kind of cool. It was nice to not have to worry about it. You just wake up and then just walk out the door. You don't have to fumble around with it. You don't have to get camera ready. I don't know. I just do what you want, I guess. But is hair transplant technology any better than it used to be? Like, I feel like I remember seeing some really, when I was a kid, I remember seeing some really gnarly hair transplants.
I think it probably depends on who's doing it for you, because the one random thing, they come up often, so I mean it's not intentional, but is the singer in 311 had male pattern baldness beginning like the mid 90s, and then went, not male pattern, I guess it's like the thinning hair, like getting your hairlines going back. Maybe, I don't know, that isn't I don't know what that is.
I don't know.
And they did like a few records with that, and then suddenly he came out and he had hair again. And that's exactly what I'm talking about. So it looks good, but I know what you did. You know, I don't, does that matter? I don't really know. I don't know what's going to happen. Clearly, looking at my hair, I don't even look at myself in the mirror before I come on this show.
Yeah.
Based.
I just don't care.
I can't really tell, because like I used to, like, I have like a big forehead generally. And then like I look at like photos of me when I was a kid, and I still have a massive cranium. So I can't tell if anything's actually happening or not. And it's like annoying, because it's just like, it would be nice to know at least, but it's difficult. It's difficult to figure out with me. It's hilarious. Some of those photos look like Brainiac or something.
I'm sure it wasn't great at first. And I'm sure there's some people still doing some botched jobs. When you go overseas to do things, I mean, I knew someone that got his teeth done in Mexico, and it was like really well done and very cheap. But I can imagine that could go a different way.
Yeah.
As well. Who knows? Okay. James Anderson wrote in, said, I had a comment on the whole speed listening debate. I got to be honest with you. This has been a huge topic in the audience, disturbing level of feedback we've gotten about this. Just absolute psychopathy throughout the entire audience. He says, because I think you're going to love this in his story. And what I mean is, I think you're going to hate this. A few years back, I decided that for the first time ever, I was going to watch Star Trek. I'm a huge sci-fi nerd, and it was possibly one of the biggest gaps in my life. I committed to watching every episode and every movie, both classic and modern, in release order. By the time I got to Deep Space Nine and onward, I was very much enjoying it, but I was also very much feeling the drag. Filler episodes, too many episodes per season, etc. So I downloaded a Google Chrome extension and began watching most episodes at 4 and 5x speed.
Oh my God.
Yes, it was completely inaudible, so I had to use subtitles. Even then, the subtitles had trouble keeping up with the video and staying in sync with itself. It took trial and error, but I eventually taught myself to keep up with was happening on screen while reading the dialogue, and I finished all of classic Star Trek this way. Saved years of my life, no regrets, and I'm a huge fan of this universe now.
Are you really a huge fan of this universe? I'm sorry to just jump right in, but what the fuck? What the fuck? Like, why don't you just download the scripts and just read them? That could probably save you some years too, you know? This is absurd. And this comes from me right now watching a show that has over 1,000 episodes. I'm watching it because I enjoy it and I like to watch it. That's the point of watching something. Am I crazy? I mean,
no, you're not crazy. It's this is consumer energy, hardcore. Like, why are you guys why is there so much need for you to watch and listen to so many things? Why can't you just, if you have 2 hours for, let's say, to listen to something or watch something a day, why don't you just watch something or listen to something for 2 hours?
But Colin,
instead of trying to get 4 hours of content into 2 hours.
If you can watch every single Lord of the Rings movie in just 2 hours, that's efficiency. This is obsession with efficiency is what it is. I don't think it's consumer energy. I think it's just like there are people who they need this level of efficiency that's just kind of like really, really unnecessary. And it's spread out to things that don't even really benefit. In fact, might actually detract from the implementation of such efficiency. Like, I get it if you're working, right, and you want to like streamline your work process and be like, all right, let me figure out something. But if you're just relaxing and enjoying media, what? 4 times, 5 times speed? That is 2 times speed is off the 2 times is too much, you know? That is already approaching like inconceivable, incomprehensible levels. So when you're at 4 times, 5 times, I don't even. How long does an episode? How long does 30 minutes take at 4 times, 5 times speed?
That would be. I mean,
That's
wouldn't
insane.
it be? Yeah, 30 divided by 5, right? So like whatever that would be.
Yeah, well,
6.
I'm not a math man.
Here's the
6
thing.
minutes.
Fucking insane. 6 minutes. That is fucking crazy.
We all, I think, try to be efficient in our consuming. I mean, the 3 of us do it. You think about how much time you have before the next game. You try to fit a game in at the right spot or whatever. And even with One Piece, there are non-canon filler episodes that they made specifically to fill time on the television run. They're usually in giant blocks. They're not canon. And so because I'm watching a show that's that big, I do skip those. They're not very often, but a little efficiency here and there. I feel like, though, that's not this, like Chris is saying, this 4 times speed. Can you hear any inflection in what someone's saying? Any nuance?
Dude,
in the acting?
I'm going to say this. You didn't watch Star Trek.
No.
Like, I don't know what you did, but you didn't watch it. And that's totally fine. You definitely know it better than I do, doing whatever it is you did to Star Trek, but I wouldn't call you watching watching Star Trek. This is literally 1 iota away from listening to music at a higher speed. No one would do that. So just back up 1 step and don't. How busy are you guys out there? I don't believe a lot of you are that busy at all, to be perfectly honest.
There's a lot of shows to watch.
But it's
insane. It's insane.
But he does probably know Star Trek better than you. You know what I mean, though? It's like,
well, yeah, he definitely knows something about Star Trek now, but he didn't watch it.
Yeah, it's kind of like saying that the guy doing the autopsy knew the guy that he's doing the autopsy on.
Sure.
It's like, I guess he does know him like a lot more kind of than his family.
There's
does,
a way
but not
that
really.
he knows the guy doing the autopsy knows that guy in some way.
Yeah, like very intimately.
In some sense, he knows him better than anyone, and in another sense, he doesn't know him at all.
Yeah. How poetic.
It's been a while. I've been saving it, so it means something. But James, stand down.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Firmly
stand down.
Stand down.
I've gone and fucked things up just like I always do. Oh man, that was a big song. That was what, Stained?
Yeah.
It's
been a while.
Remember, it was Fred Durst doing like, well, oh no, that was another song they were doing with Stained. It's been a while is the straight up one, but there was that other one that they did at Family Values, and then it became. Do you know what I'm talking? You guys are too young to know. What
I
I'm
have no
talking
idea what this is.
about. I'm on the outside.
Oh, I'm looking in.
Yeah,
Okay,
Fred Durst sang that with him or whatever, and that was so weird. It was a weird.
That was weird.
Stained was weird. They were good though. They were fun. All right. So as far as this, you're right. I try to be judicious in my time. I always say I listen to podcasts when I play video games or I'm doing mindless things in video games. That's a certain multitask. However, I'm not listening to the podcast 4 times faster than it is, and I'm not playing the game with pro action replay. You know what I mean? It's like at some point, what do you do? Just, I don't have time to do everything I want. I don't watch movies at all. I don't almost ever watch TV shows. I really just play video games and watch YouTube in my spare time. And that's just, it is what it is. I can't could I watch the Predator videos at 5 times speed on YouTube? Yeah. But when they're calling their wives confessing, I'm going to miss all the inflection and all the importance of the message.
You want to savor those. But I remember, didn't you play like a really old like JRPG recently and it had like a fast forward kind of like function on it?
Yeah. Trails of Cold Steel.
Colin and I both have done this recently.
Yeah.
So how do you reconcile those things?
Yeah, I guess that's true. But because there are 2 games I've done that in: Final Fantasy VII when they ported it, and then Trails of Cold Steel on PS4. Yeah, I guess that's a similar sort of thing. But there's 2 things. When you're speeding up the game, it doesn't speed up the dialogue. It just is said normally. Yeah, so that's the thing you can't speed up.
I guess you've also played those games already. So I guess it's a little bit different.
Well, this new one I didn't play, but that's a good point, I guess. I mean, it's a point. I don't know if it's a good point, but you've made a point.
Yeah,
there's a point.
I'm happy with it.
Yeah, fair enough. All right. Well, guys, please stop. I don't know. Do I have to get like on my hands and knees here and beg for you guys not to act like this? Because it's disturbing. And I'm authentically disturbed how many of you do this. Although it could be that I'm just drawing out all the people that are admitting to it. So it just seems like it's a lot of people.
Yeah.
Like they're very proud of themselves right now or something. I don't know. Porkio wrote in. Said, hey, CDC, I had a bit of a misconnection with one of the listeners the other night and feel like you should all know.
Oh, no.
You see, I work the graveyard shift at a certain rodent-themed amusement park in Florida. There aren't many people in the parks overnight, so you can imagine my surprise when I heard Chris's voice from a stall at the end of the restroom giving out his award for how'd you mess that up. I chuckled at the urinal and called out, blasting sacred symbols from the stall, stand down. I was met with silence and could tell the audio got a few clicks softer. As I furled my willy and began to wash my hands, I wondered, was that call out a mistake? Am I the old man making unwanted remarks in the pisser? Or perhaps, did I catch you off guard? Was I not clear enough? Maybe I will never know. We could have been friends. Are you listening out there, my friend? Not you, Porkio. I know you're listening. The other guy? You guys should meet in the bathroom at Disney. I want you guys to meet in the bathroom at 2 a.m. in Disney World.
That is so damn funny. I love the idea of somebody hearing, like somebody being caught listening to a podcast that they enjoy and then just like in a stall and just deciding to just pretend like they're not there. I really love that idea.
All right, before we anything else to say about this? We're moving into the news quick. Today.
Oh, well, I think it probably, if we want to give any advice, he probably should have waited for this person to leave the stall and then said something. If somebody tries to talk to me while I'm in a public bathroom stall of all places, I don't know if I would have said anything either, because I just am like, bro, we can bond over sacred after I'm out. You know what I mean? Or something like that.
But then you just have this guy just not doing anything in the bathroom, standing, waiting for you.
You step outside and he's like, I heard you listening to sacred symbols.
I heard you listening to
real close to your face.
I don't know why we're giving this guy this voice. It's a little mean, but it's just like, I don't know. It's kind of a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation. You need to have a lot of finesse to finagle your way into this friendship. So best of luck to you, Porkio.
Yeah, if we can act like a Craigslist misconnection here for you two, I hope you guys can poop together next time and listen to the show as one. Okay. Now, I want to say, I didn't put this in the news, but I wanted to say something really quick. And this is just an aside. Is last week on Sacred Symbols, we had a conversation about the limited run game situation, the trans community, or at least that what happened there with the trans community and so on and so forth. I get this feedback, and so I want to speak to it very specifically because it's annoying. People often say, get someone on the show that talks about the other side. Invite someone on the show. Be courageous enough to have someone on the show that expresses a different opinion. Guys, I can't force people to come onto the show. if you really think that I haven't been reaching out to people to try to talk about these issues, all of these divisive issues, you're wrong. I just wanted to say that really quick because I feel like people say I think I just say things in a vacuum and then don't try earnestly to get someone on that will discuss the issue with me. And I'm going to use a person as a specific example of how I've pursued someone recently to try to get them on the show to express a different point of view and how these people just refuse to show up. Not that not that they have to. I mean, it's up to them. There's a guy, a small writer named Ryan Easby, who talks tons of shit about me all the time, has for years. In fact, if you look on Twitter, like you can, and just search from his name and Colin, it's like, it's hysterical. It's like, comes off quite often. But I noticed that this person had called me alt-right and had problems more recently with things I was saying about Hogwarts Legacy and J.K. Rowling and all of this. And I emailed this person politely 3 times, invited them on the show to talk, said they can say whatever they want to me. No edits. We can have it out and hash it out and all of the rest. And I would pay a substantial appearance fee that I guarantee for someone who's really not even in the industry and doesn't really have much work in the industry. He's never been paid as much as I would have offered him for his work to be on the show. I do this a lot. Now, is it a sign that people don't want to come on the show? I guess. I mean, obviously. But I think it's a sign of something deeper. I am completely confident in the things I say. I think people know that. I don't just say things half-cocked. And if I feel like I made a mistake, I apologize for it. I acknowledge and I apologize for it. Everyone that listens to the show knows that. I am trying my very hardest to get dissonant voices on the show to represent other points of view. But the people that could represent those points of view are very scared of fighting back. I think the reason is because they know they would lose the argument in these various situations. I am opening up my platform to any content creator of a certain size that wants to talk about these issues and disagrees with everything I say. I don't know how much more explicit I can be about that. So stop telling me to invite people on the show. Stop telling me that I don't have the other opinions on. Start asking all of the people I ask on the show why they won't defend the other side of any of these issues. I just wanted to throw that out there. And this Ryan Easby guy is the most recent example. It's easy to tweet about people to no audience, no one's responding, but what I'm giving you a platform to say exactly what you want. And if I were fixated enough on someone in the industry, which I'm not, that I followed what they said, didn't agree with them and whatever, and then they were like, come on the show and make me look like an asshole, I would be all over that. I would go in with my shoulder down and I would be thrilled to do it. So it just, doesn't that say something about the other side of the arguments? If people are so confident in them, here you go. Accept the invite. So I just wanted to throw that out there. I see what you guys are saying about inviting these other voices. I think most people understand that I do, but for those that don't, understand that it's not even implicit. I explicitly email these people. Not explicit like my pictures of my junk or something like that. I email them with explicit requests, explicit comment requests, explicit appearance invitations. 99% ignored. That's okay. That's part of being a journalist, and that's part of like doing the shoe leather kind of journalism of finding people to talk to and finding the story. But no more of this idea that I don't. Start embracing the idea that a lot of these people are scared. That's all I wanted to say. Moving on. Sacred Symbols is sponsored by Tommy John and their maximally comfortable clothing for men and women, which you can discover for yourself at TommyJohn.com/sacred. My friends, Valentine's Day is right around the corner, and it's of vital importance that your undergarments are in top shape and of the finest quality so that you don't scare away any potential lovers. Tommy John can help hook you up with the products you need to look the part on the big day, including new boxers and briefs, undershirts, and more. But if you really want to show you care this Valentine's Day, you'd also be wise to consider Tommy John as an awesome gift for your boyfriend or girlfriend, for your fiance, or for your husband or wife, or even for your mistress or side piece. I'm not here to judge you. See, Tommy John's range of extra comfortable clothing, including sweatpants, sweatshirts, and so much more, are of the highest quality and provide insane comfort. And if you want to be a little playful on Valentine's Day, Tommy John's soft, breathable underwear may be the ticket to a little magic. My friends, I'm always on the search for comfortable underwear, so I'm looking forward to trying Tommy John not only for Valentine's Day, but perhaps even for all romantically inclined days to come. With millions of customers and a best pair you'll ever wear or its free guarantee, there's no risk to try Tommy John and see what this brand has to offer. Comfy fabrics, quality construction, and options that naturally go together. It's time for you to try Tommy John for yourself. Get 20% off your first purchase at TommyJohn.com/sacred right now for Valentine's Day. That's TommyJohn.com/SACRED. Hurry to TommyJohn.com/sacred for 20% off. Again, that's TommyJohn.com/sacred. See site for details. Let's get into the Last of Us HBO show real quick. I wanted to start with Warner Media. Of course, Warner owns HBO. They released a press release saying that the series premiere of The Last of Us drew 4.7 million viewers across linear and HBO Max platforms on Sunday night, according to Nielsen and first-party data. If HBO's data is right, they say that this is the second largest debut, only behind House of Dragons, since Boardwalk Empire premiered on the network in 2010, before HBO programming was broadly available on streaming. So what they're basically saying is that this number might be very low. They go on to say Sunday night's performance was nearly double the season 2 debut night of Euphoria, which went on to average 19.5 million viewers for the episode. In the US, Sunday night viewership for an HBO series typically represents 20 to 40% of the show's total gross audience per episode. So at 20%, we're talking about maybe over 20 million viewers. I watched it the next day, so I wasn't counted. Now, I said earlier, we're covering the show in depth on Sacred Symbols Plus. We're going to do an episode each week for our patrons, going deep into the show. We did that for the first episode. Again, it was me, Dustin, Ben, and who else was there? It was Dagan. And Chris, you weren't on, and now I'd like to have you on the next episode if possible, so we can get your opinions more deeply. But I wanted to give you an opportunity to sound off on the show and what you might have thought about it. And so let's hear from you.
Yeah, I mean, I just not to go super in depth about it, but I thought they did a pretty solid job. I thought it was definitely, of the direct video game adaptations that we've seen, it's probably, I don't know if there's any really other adaptation that holds a candle to it. I think, namely because it's so faithful. Castlevania is wonderful and Cyberpunk Edge Runners is great, but those are more about the worlds than they are about like directly adapting source material. And so as far as that goes, I think they did a really good job. I thought they nailed the opening sequence, specifically the car escape and that entire buildup. I thought they nailed it. There was an aspect towards the end that I felt was a little bit rushed, but not so much to the point where like I feel like I only noticed that because I have something to compare it to in the game. Like I don't think most viewers would have felt like it was rushed in any real way. But I thought they did a good job. I thought those are probably it's as good as I think as it could be. You know, I still don't think it's like 10 out of 10. I'm not like blown away by it because we just sort of know what's going to happen. Like I know all the story that's about to happen. So I'm not like blown away by it, but I am surprised at how well it turned out, given how many of these shows end up being colossal failures. But at the same time, HBO is kind of known for this. Their quality bar anyway. So
yeah, their quality bar is extremely high. So
yeah.
Famously, I think they refilmed the entire Game of Thrones pilot. I think they did the whole thing again, right? Because it wasn't good enough or whatever. Mm-hmm. So yeah, they're known to do the right thing. Now, Dustin and I went deep into this, and we're not going to spoil the show here. I mean, you've had the show does the game a little bit differently, so I don't want to spoil either things here. You had such a long time to play The Last of Us. I don't know what the fuck you guys are doing if you haven't played it, but just to reiterate, and Dustin, I'll throw it to you, just for people that don't have Sacred Symbols Plus or haven't listened to our opinions, I'll say this briefly. I think it's really, really great. I think it's extraordinarily good. And Neil Druckmann is directing the next episode, which is interesting. So we'll see how that goes. Craig Mazin did the first one, but I really like, and it's what we said, Dustin, on the show, the kind of one of the themes we were touching on was it gets to where it's going the same places, but it's totally different the way it gets to these places. And the intro with Sarah and all of the rest and kind of, Ellie and Joel meeting each other, it's a little bit different. But they get to in some places quite a bit different, but they get to the same place. And one of the things I was saying, and I guess this is a little spoilerish, is it seems like there's a lot of mirror image stuff in the game. Like I liked how, and one example I used on the show was when they're driving, there's the farm on fire, but it's on the other side of the road. Little things like that where they change. But then right before that, there's like a literal shot from the game of the signpost.
Yeah.
And then they don't find the people on their side of the road to encounter, to say no to, and all the rest. So things change a little bit in that regard. But I really dug it. Dustin, what are your kind of top line thoughts on The Last of Us on HBO? Highly encourage everyone to go listen to Sacred Symbols Plus if you'd like more.
Yeah, I thought it was really, really awesome. And it sort of, I mentioned this and going more in depth on the spoiler cast, but it definitely caused me to rethink some of my opinions on how you can create I don't want to say more impactful, but at least a different emotional impact through something being told live action than through a game. Just because this first episode definitely hit me in the feels in a lot of different ways. I will say, as far as these numbers are concerned, I think that this is only going to go up from this first episode. I think this is the type of show that maybe a lot of fans were really excited for, but maybe they weren't quite sure. And then with it being so good, I think that just word of mouth is gonna really, really grow this show. And I'm most interested in, I convinced my parents to watch it. And what's interesting is that there's some of the only people I know closely that know nothing about The Last of Us. And so I kind of want to check in on them each week and be like, so what are you thinking? How'd you feel about this? Just because they don't know what's going to happen at all. They don't know about Joel and Ellie. So it's a neat perspective to have. And I'm sure that there are lots of people all over that are going to be having that perspective. So I'm excited. Let's see if they can keep it up. And like you said, Colin, the fact that Neil is directing the next episode, very intriguing.
Yeah, I'm so excited for him. That's imagine directing an HBO show. I mean, imagine having your story adapted into an HBO show. I'd be walking with such a big swinging dick right now. I mean, if you're the co-head of Naughty Dog, Sony's crown jewel studio, basically making one of the most popular HBO shows ever now, and you're directing it and you're doing it, man, what a fucking renaissance, a Neil Druckmann renaissance. Very well done. So yeah, we're excited. We're going to keep covering it on Sacred Symbols Plus. I know there are a couple of people disappointed that we're going to spend so much real estate on it, but I think, what are we going to spend the real estate on and not this? I mean, this is huge. And so I think it's a great way to spend some time. So we're going to continue to circulate people from our orbit into the episodes, get some different perspectives. I think we'll keep digging consistently just because he's unemployed right now and so has nothing to do. So I'm trying to entertain him. The money is not even an issue because he knows he'll get a job whenever. It's just, I think he's bored. So
yeah, 2023 is the crossover year for Last Stand. It's been interesting and cool.
People are enjoying it, dude. People are enjoying Constellation. They're enjoying all this banter between everyone, getting Dagan much more involved. And I always said I knew he was our secret weapon. And so I'm so pleased that people are enjoying all that. But yes, come check out Sacred Symbols Plus on Patreon for our full conversations about The Last of Us as we go episode by episode. I got to go get something. So you guys talk to each other for a couple minutes. Not even. I'll be back in 1 minute. You can keep it in the show if you want. I don't care.
Oh, we're
whatever you'd like. Okay.
Yeah. So, Chris, I always wondered about that blanket. Have you ever used that? So for the audio listeners, Chris has a Halo 2 woven blanket in the background. Did you ever use that to warm yourself? Do you feel like Chief himself is warming you?
No way. That thing is it's a tapestry. It's a woven tapestry, so it's not it holds no warmth at all.
Damn it.
And also I'd be too paranoid to like mess it up. So that's why it's hung up. I mean, it's a big fucking, it's really not small.
Right. You can get those custom made. Maybe that's a good idea for Colin's wedding. A photo of the three of us on a woven blanket.
Yeah. He'll have to hang it up.
It could go on his couch.
It'll be that photo of us at one of the meetups where like he's in between us and we look like his sons.
Yes, exactly. Dude, that might be. I've been thinking about what I should get Colin for his wedding gift because I feel like probably should be something pretty awesome. He's my employer. He's the way I can feed myself and survive. So I should probably get him something cool, but I just don't know what.
Well, we've got time.
Yeah.
I gotta put some thought into that myself. I haven't figured it out.
Oh, good.
One thing I want to run this by you, and maybe the audience as well. They can chime in. If you woke up one day and you realized that your reflection was out of focus, how would you tell people like would you seek help for that? Like your reflection is completely out of focus. Everything else is in focus. Your friends can corroborate this with you. They look in the mirror. You're the only person out of focus.
Well,
like,
see,
at what point do you like start to seek help for the, or it like does it affect your life enough that you would even be compelled to seek focus or to seek help?
Yeah, that's a good question, because the fact that my first thing would be, I would grab Holly or whatever, confirm, am I out of focus? And she says yes. It's like, okay, I'm not crazy. But here's the thing. If you start to alert too many people, you're going to end up in a lab or something.
Right.
Because this ain't natural.
It's going to be it's an ET situation. They're going to come grab you in the middle of the night in their little astronaut suits.
Yeah. And they're going to cut you open or something. I don't know. Like, would be very, very risky at that point. So I guess... But then I imagine, what if you're like, I don't know, let's say you're in line at a food court or something, and sometimes they'll have like a wall that's like a mirror or something.
Yeah. No, people
you
will
could easily be, someone's like, hey, that guy's out of focus.
Yeah. People will inevitably notice. But the issue is like, do you go, like, who do you even go to get that? Like, do you go to a witch? Do you go to a doctor? You know what I mean? Like, it's just such a specific, mundane, Lovecraftian ailment.
Right.
That there's just like, I'm
gonna have to think on this.
A doctor would give you like an antihistamine and tell you just like, I don't know, go to bed, I guess, like get some rest.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
No worries.
I'm back. What were you guys talking about? Is it important? No.
I don't want to tell you.
Okay, fair enough. You don't have to tell me. I don't want to make you force you to tell me anything.
I feel it was all about you.
It's funnier if we don't tell you, I think.
All right. Now, a lot of people wrote in about this. I saw that you said something about this on Twitter, I think, Chris.
Yeah.
So let's examine this. Johannes Holmberg Wyke wrote in, as many did, and said, hey guys, battle passes galore. What the fuck? This latest battle pass leak from Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League has just had me perplexed, quite frankly. Why are they doing this? A battle pass for a game that tells a story, even if it is purely cosmetic, the very inclusion of it makes it look so generic, and it makes me worried for story-driven games in the long term. What do you guys think about this leak? Certainly removed some of my interest. By the way, Chris has got some range in his singing based on the recent tweet. Get your ass into the studio, my guy. God bless. We all know Chris is a very talented musician. That's how he got well known on the internet to begin with. So go check him out, of course. All right. Johannes says, as many have, Chris, and we'll go to you since you have a passion about this. There's this Twitter leak from a guy named Andrew Marmo. I don't know who this is. Oh, he's freelance video game news reporter. Okay. Oh, I guess these images might have been taken down because when you click on them, it says media not displayed.
I'm trying to find it again.
They got copyright claimed.
Interesting. So I'm sure it's somewhere. But it's funny. They took the copyright claim down, but not the thumbnail, so you can still see it. And for people that need a description, it's basically like a stage select or a character select screen that looks like from Suicide Squad. It's got all the debug data all over it. It's obviously real. I have to be honest with you. And Chris, I want to throw it to you. I don't know what people are so upset about. Like, what are we talking about here specifically? Why are people so upset about this image?
It's just this design philosophy that's kind of, and we talk about the death of good UI a lot on this podcast and others. I know I tweet about it kind of often, and it's just this notion that every menu needs everything on screen at the same exact time, and everything needs some weird arbitrary style to it that just like I forget I wish I had the image saved so I could point directly to the things about it that I hate.
I'll find it. Keep going.
But it's just this Fortnite, Apex Legends, like, here are all the main characters on your mission select screen because we need to show you your characters on the UI as often as possible, so that you are tricked into thinking that your investment in a $20 skin is going to drastically improve your experience because you're forced to look at the same characters over and over again. And just this unnecessary amount of screen real estate that 3D character models of your fucking squad take up for no fucking reason. This is a menu. This is a character. It's not even a character select screen. It's just the chapter select screen. There's it says chapter select, matchmaking, and then up at the top, it's got all these different tabs. So there's like two different like scrolling languages going on. It just reminds me of
I put a picture in the chat, by the way.
Yeah. Wait, in the
chat here on Zen, do you see it?
No.
Yeah, it doesn't show for me either.
Really?
Yeah.
I'll put it
Anyway.
in. That's so strange. I'll put it in Discord, but
I remember just looking at it and just thinking like this looks like everything. This looks like everything I have seen in the last like 5 years. It looks like that Anthem Next preview that they did. It looks like Destiny. It just looks like all these other games. And I'm just like, this is a single player. Well, not single player, but like it is a story driven, narrative game with multiplayer elements. Why does the UI need to be this noisy? Why does it need to be this cluttered? Why do the characters need to be there at all? It's like in God of War when you're like doing the customization and Kratos is just taking up 50% of the screen. It's like, what? This is such an unnecessary use of screen real estate. I just don't get it. And I'm sick of bad UI. I think I'm getting to the point where like I've reached my maximum tolerance for just this ugly aesthetic. There's no presence. There's no style. I mean, you think of like even just games like Persona and how like stylistic their UIs are, but they're still like very functional. And just like all of this function is going out the window in favor of just this generic, like, look at your character because we need to show you your character because you're going to buy skins and we need to trick you into thinking they have value. There's no real aesthetic language to it at all other than just this basic kind of mobile game standard kind of tabs at the top, list at the side. I personally hate it. I think people are just, I don't think this is particularly bad. I don't think it's like the worst UI I've ever seen. It's just the latest example of something that just really just isn't good. And I think it's just a matter of, I don't think this is a straw that broke the camel's back. I don't think that's like a perfect analogy or like a perfect idiom for this, but it is just it's just like, oh my God, another one of these that looks like this. God damn. Can we catch a break? I think that's what it is.
Yeah, I guess. Well, I want to hear what you have to say about this, Dustin, because I'm kind of perplexed. I mean, I'm looking at it now. First of all, Captain Boomerang is awesome.
Looks like Gotham Knights also.
Yeah, it does look. Well, hopefully we'll run at 60 frames. I understand people are upset about the Battle Pass situation, but I look at this and I'm like, this looks fine to me. I mean, I guess I'm thinking about, like, we just played God of War Ragnarok. This looks 10 times better than God of War Ragnarok's menus, in my opinion. Like, literally enormously stronger than that game's menus, that language that game used, in my opinion. What do you think about this? I feel like I'm just missing something here. Yeah.
So my issues are totally different than Chris's, but I think Chris's are valid as well. But my thing is that if you look at the top of the screen under where it has the list where it has like your loadout and stuff like that, it looks like there are 6 different currencies. If I'm looking at this correctly.
Yeah, you're right.
6 different currencies. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe that's something else.
There's no central bank in the world of the Justice League.
Apparently.
Yeah.
And my second issue is where at the bottom, over each character's name, there's a 25, a 12, 25, 12, 26, 12. I don't know if this is some kind of a leveling RPG system or something like that. And I will remain firm that the gameplay we saw of this game looked fantastic, looked really, really good.
Yeah.
But I have to apply the same criticism that I did pre-release of Gotham Knights to this game, in that I don't need this game to have RPG elements and stats in it. I would have much preferred something that was a little more streamlined. But I think that's where a lot of people's problems with this going into it is that there's so many of these half live service games that are they're like kind of live service and kind of not. And they definitely tend to mimic their worst aspects, whether it be the leveling or like having 6 different currencies or the battle pass, like whatever. I don't give a fuck if this game has a battle pass or not. If it's cosmetic shit in there, if you want to buy it, whatever. That doesn't bother me. It's the stuff in this screenshot that could potentially affect the way the game plays and progresses that does concern me. So I don't know. We'll see. I'm still open-minded. And like I said, the gameplay we saw, very, very good. It doesn't change that, but I'm definitely feeling more concerned after seeing this.
Yeah, I it's interesting. We have a situation here where I think the 3 of us all just look at it a little bit differently. Like, I don't see anything wrong with this. I really just don't. Like I looked at this and I'm like, what am I stared at it for several minutes. I'm like, what are we complaining about? I understand Chris's argument, but that didn't read to me at first. And then I saw people complaining about the battle pass. I'm like, just don't buy it. I don't know. By the way, and again, I know this comes off as a little bit corporate apologist, which is certainly not the vibe of our show, but better get used to this shit, man. I'm telling you guys right now.
Yeah.
That how many times have I told you you're not going to like some of the things that PlayStation's going to do in the future? Like they're not saying much because it might not be as exciting as you think. I'm sure there's a lot of exciting things in there, but developers are going to figure out ways to extract money from you. There's just no doubt about it. And it's actually more imperative than ever as the game costs go up and all of the rest. So I'm not super surprised to see them kind of nickel and diming here. But as far as the language is concerned, I look at this and I don't know, I think it's leaps and bounds ahead of God of War Ragnarok, which I felt like just didn't. That's one of the worst parts of the game, in my opinion. But nonetheless, that was making the rounds. I wanted to acknowledge it. My friends, we talked a lot about Skull and Bones. That's the Ubisoft upcoming forever in development pirate game. However, they randomly released a half an hour of gameplay of it with some commentary over it. I didn't watch most of it. I scrubbed through it. I was curious if you guys had any thoughts on this. Dustin, let's start with you. Did you get a chance to look at Skull and Bones, the deck gameplay dev stream from Ubisoft? It's got 1.4 thousand upvotes and 4.4 thousand downvotes. However, I feel like that's pretty harsh. It looks good to me. I just it's not my kind of game, and it looks like it's a PS4 game. So I mean, those would be my major things to say about it.
Right. I did the same thing as you, where I skimmed through this presentation a tiny bit, but even if this game is awesome, it's still probably not going to appeal to me. It very much has it's a spin-off of that Assassin's Creed naval combat. And I never was really into that, but it's cool. At least I will say it's good for Ubisoft, the fact that they're getting ahead of this leak, or the delay, and saying, hey, here's 33 minutes. It's not all crazy like this game is going to get canceled or something. We just need some more time. Is that going to save the game? I don't know, but I appreciate them at least being open and showing more of the game at the time of the delay.
Chris, what do you think? Did you get a chance to look at Skull and Bones? Do you have any thoughts on it?
Yeah, I mean, I did what you guys did. I scrubbed through it. Definitely wasn't going to sit and watch. I watched it at 10 times speed. But I don't. It's just not my kind of game. Like if I'm gonna play a pirate game, it's gonna be Sea of Thieves or nothing. Because it's this third person kind of Assassin's Creed spin-off mechanic. I just it doesn't speak to me. It doesn't look like a train wreck. It doesn't look like a Duke Nukem Forever situation where they've just spent a lot of time developing this game and then it just looks completely unplayable or just really, really misses the mark. It just looks like a game that is not going to appeal to me. And, I don't know how emblematic that is of necessarily the general audience. Like, I don't know if there is a huge audience out there that's just very silent, but it definitely doesn't look stand out enough to attract anybody who isn't already really, really into it. And I question how many of those people are even real. It looks fine.
Yeah, I'm interested to see how it does. Like, what is Ubisoft's intention with this particular product? I know that they're desperate for a game as a service. Do they really see the promise in this? I just feel like it's got a stink on it.
Yeah.
That they won't be able to kind of get away from, but we'll find out soon enough. Okay, let's get into this quick video here. I wanted to ask you about this specifically, Dustin. I came across this game, Sailing Era. It's on PC now. It's a Chinese game made by GY Games, published by Bilibili, and it's apparently coming to PlayStation later, but it's described as a hyper-realistic sailing and trade adventure in a massive open world. And it looks fucking cool. I just wanted to point this out to people. If people want to go check it out, go look up the game Sailing Era and see what you think of it. What do you think of this? Does this look like something up your alley?
Well, if it's hyper realistic, then I'm becoming a sailor right now for some of these waifus, if you know what I'm saying.
Sure.
I'm a little unsure about this. Not that I think that it looks bad. I just don't know if I would be interested into it. It looks very resource management heavy. In fact, it almost seems like it's one of those games that's kind of split between going out, doing naval combat, or getting treasure, whatever, something like that, trading or whatever, and then going and taking those back to shore, handling all of those resources, stuff like that. The art from this game, I think, looks really fantastic, though, and
Me
really
too.
quite good. But it is an intriguing title. I'm curious because, let's see, this trailer came out 7 days ago, out now on PC. I haven't heard anyone talk about this at all. I watched the trailer, though, when you sent it earlier, and I wonder if it's any good. Surely someone in our audience is checking this game out, so let us know the preview before it comes to console.
Yeah, for people that go check it out. I mean, again, when I stopped doing the like the game wrap up, like all the games that were announced and stuff, I promised people that I would still try to bubble up games that I thought looked particularly interesting. And so I always go to Gamatsu every week, which is a great website, and where they basically announce all the games. And I just saw this and I was like, this looks super cool for it. So I would describe it as it kind of looks like a 32-bit era role-playing game, kind of a little bit chibi, with obviously lots of anime art and overlay. But you basically play as a boat captain, and there's like a bunch of different gameplay elements. You're exploring this ocean, discovering new lands, finding things, resources to trade, and people to kind of like recruit. And then you can do naval battles, you can do ship to ship, like on the deck battles, and all of this turn-based. It looks very, very neat. Very, very different. Wanted to point it out just as a random aside. Sailing era. Go check it out. And Dustin, the only reason I'm bringing this up, I was going to talk about this game a little later, was because when I had talked about this in our private Discord, you had said that you had not really believed it, or you think that they were kind of being a little shady about this. So Push Square, amongst others, reports that Atomic Heart, which is the upcoming Mundfish developed first-person shooter, is going to be 60 frames on PS5, no matter what. Now, in response to a tweet, Mundfish on Twitter said it will be solid at 60 frames on console, 4K in dungeons, dynamic resolution, mostly 4K at 60 frames in the open world for next gen. But you were skeptical of this. Why is that?
I feel a little skeptical because this seems like it would be pretty impressive to get, from what we've seen, at least the environments of this size running at what they say is mostly 4K at 60 FPS. Now, one important thing, and maybe I'm just overreading into this tweet, he says they say solid 60 FPS 4K in dungeons, and then a dynamic resolution that's mostly 4K at 60. So the 60 is no longer solid then in the open environments, potentially. I don't know. My other theory is that, and I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with this, it is maybe a little bit of a fib, but I'm guessing that is some kind of upscale as well, which is no problem, as we've seen with Demon's Souls. Demon's Souls is an upscaled 1440p, and it looks better than some 4K games that I've seen, honestly. It looks fantastic. So it's not necessarily a bad thing. I just am really curious how, first of all, if it is a true 4K at 60 on PlayStation 5, which, like I said, based on what we've seen, would be very impressive. But also if it's not a native, or if there's maybe some variance in the frame rate as well. Just seems like a little extreme based on what we've seen out of the PS5 so far.
Yeah. What do you think about this, Chris? Do you feel like Atomic Heart could be pushing these particularly high-end specs on PS5?
I mean, I think it's possible. I do think there's a lot of, I would imagine there's upscaling happening, because because that doesn't necessarily mean it's not 4K. You know, if something's upscaled to 4K, you could get away with saying this is 4K, because like it's ultimately, right, you know, that's not technically dishonest. It's a little fibby, but I don't know, I'm not too worried about Atomic Heart. I think what I'm most worried about Atomic Heart isn't. What I'm worried most about in Atomic Heart is how it's going to play, because I remember those early videos looking very clunky and just kind of very not fluid. The trailers have gotten better, but I wonder if it will feel as good as it looks, or whether or not it will still kind of feel like the clunky game we first saw when this was initially kind of shown, just with like better animations there to kind of cover up or maybe just present better in trailers. That's my main concern with it. I don't imagine this is going to be a game that runs at like 20. I don't think we're going to see like a Cyberpunk situation.
No.
But you know, who knows?
I was going to talk about this in the closing questions, comments, concerns, thoughts, and ideas that we have at the end of each show, because someone, we have 6 of those at the end of the show. However, this probably makes a little more sense as opposed to having these non sequiturs later on. So I'm going to pull one of those questions in right now, as I sometimes do. And it comes from the Brownie Bro, since we're talking about Atomic Heart, which, by the way, I think looks absolutely awesome. It says, "Hey, CDC, Mundfish recently put out a tweet which sparked quite the conversation. In said tweet, they identified themselves as a pro-peace organization against violence against people. Now the comment section is filled with boycotting mobs, declaring how supporting Atomic Heart is putting money towards the Russian invasion of Ukraine. How feasible are these accusations, really? Once the game is released, are the Russian forces suddenly going to have the funds to develop weaponized androids as featured in the game? There's no doubt Mundfish received a check from Microsoft in order to get Atomic Heart on Game Pass. Thoughts? Oh, have you guys been following this controversy at all with Mundfish? And first of all, to Colin was right thing, although, we kid around about that. I told you guys on this show that the second that the people realize that this is a Russian game, which I don't think a lot of people are realizing, or a lot of people that cover the industry just don't know anything about it. To be perfectly honest with you, I don't know how many times that has to be repeated over and over again. But I told you when they figured out that this was a Russian game, there was going to be a problem. And lo and behold, people have figured out that this is a Russian developed game. Although they make the claim that they are working in a global team, I'm not entirely sure how that works, because they are supposed to be embargoed from economically dealing with a lot of different countries. But nonetheless, I'm wondering if this plays in at all. Dustin, do you feel like Mundfish being a Russian developer and therefore Atomic Heart being a Russian game, does that matter to you? And does that matter overall?
Based on what I've seen right now, I feel like it really doesn't matter. I think they've tried to get ahead of this through tweets like this, but the reality is, no matter what they say, it will never be good enough for the people that have made up their mind that them being Russian, it makes this a no-go, which, whatever. Stick to your convictions if you feel that way. I don't know if is there enough mind share in the industry for people to be hating on Hogwarts Legacy and this game in the same month at the same time. I don't know. We might just simply implode, but I don't know. I saw some weird stuff, and I'm hesitant to bring this up in too much detail because it's crazy Twitter shit. But people that were looking in deep into different developers of this game and trying to find things that they've said, whether or not they're pro-war or whatever. And I don't know. It's too tiring. And I guess this is probably where I want to throw it to Chris, because I was watching, Chris was streaming yesterday, and a lot of this stuff I think also applies to both this situation and the Hogwarts Legacy situation, where it's like, how moralistic are we going to be with everything in our lives? Everything. We can't. Yeah. And sure, there are things that for some people are going to, like I said, be no-goes, and stick to your convictions. That's fine. But if we're going to get this nitpicky, then you might want to look in the mirror and really think about all the things you're consuming, because you're going to have a truly bad time. If
no ethical consumption under capitalism. Isn't that the old saying?
Yeah.
What do you make about this, or think about this, Chris? I have thoughts about this, but I want to hear what you guys have to say first.
Yeah, I mean, I think, I'll answer the question that you asked to Dustin first. Does this matter to me? No. I don't. Yes. I just don't care. I just feel like, we talk a lot about, and you could there could be an argument. It's like, well, it's a Russian studio, and that money goes to the Russian government, and the Russian government does this and that. And you could make kind of an analogous argument about like Tencent and how we're kind of uncomfortable giving Tencent our money. Except I can't speak for everybody on the show, but like for me, the issue with Tencent isn't that they have Chinese studios making games from China. The issue is that they are pumping money into our developers, and they are kind of usurping our development teams and kind of taking over our development talent and our IP. Like, that's the weird thing about it. It's not like I have no issue buying a Chinese developed game from a Chinese studio. Like, I think what was that? There was
Wulong?
Wulong, and then there was that other one that looks like it was based on kind of Odyssey to the West. I think those look really cool, and I'm really interested in checking those out because those are Chinese games developed by Chinese studios. There's nothing wrong with that. In the same way, I don't feel like there's anything wrong with playing Atomic Heart just because the money that they make might go to the Russian government, and the Russian government does all sorts of shit that I don't agree with. You know, the Chinese government does shit that I don't agree with. The US government does a ton of shit that I don't agree with. And I cannot live in this sphere where I'm constantly thinking about all these things, because there would be nothing left to play. We wouldn't be doing a PlayStation podcast because PlayStations are sourced by slave labor at Foxconn. So like there would be nothing to do. There would be no show. There would be no media. It'd be over. Maybe I could listen to music. Maybe. Maybe that's probably like the least stem to stern problematically produced or sourced type of entertainment. But are you really gonna draw this line? And this is kind of like what I was talking about with Hogwarts Legacy on stream, where it's just like it's not necessarily the individual choice to boycott that bothers me. It's like, that's fine. I think everybody has a right to do whatever the fuck they want with their money, and if they have a particular feeling about something, they should absolutely vote with their wallet. I'm curious about how games media specifically is going to cover this, because to me, drawing a line in the sand at Hogwarts Legacy, but then when Metal Slug Tactics comes out, they're probably going to cover it. That to me is insane. Because even operating under the assumption that somebody like J.K. Rowling is, let's operate under the assumption that J.K. Rowling is Kanye West currently. You know, like she's like absolutely off her rocker. She's fucking praising Hitler and shit. It still doesn't hold a candle to assassinating a journalist. So like, it's just a weird line for me, and all of these are weird lines for me. Atomic Heart looks really fucking cool, and I'm curious to play it. I can't be thinking about where that money's going to be going, because none of our money goes places that we want it to go.
It's so interesting. I just find it so interesting. I was thinking about this, and this is my take. They want Mundfish, the developers of Mundfish, to like take a stance against the war in Ukraine, which is explicitly illegal in Russia.
Yeah.
So I don't know exactly what they want these people to do, but nonetheless,
it's a very Western lens, I will say.
Right.
It's like why it'd be really easy to do that in America, and it's like, yeah. That's because,
are you eating?
I did eat a little bit of a cashew.
Oh my God. Is it raw or is it toasted?
What? What?
Is it raw? Is it a raw cashew or is it a toasted cashew?
It's just a fucking Planter's whole salted I don't know, like what?
Oh, okay. Yeah, I like raw cashews. That's why I was asking. I like raw cashews. Like,
yeah, I don't think it's
He
toasted.
likes the nuts raw.
I like it. Give me the nuts raw.
I'm trying to bulk. So
it never ends with you in the fucking gym, does it?
No. I have to worry. I have to bulk even when I'm recording.
Well, here's what I want to say about this. I was thinking when I was in college, there was and I don't know if you guys remember, you would have been in middle school maybe or something, there was massive anti-war demonstrations all over the United States.
Mm-hmm.
Millions of people, right, came out in the streets. I want to say 2005, something like that, 2006.
Yeah, I remember this.
And I was in college. I didn't go. I actually supported the war at the time because I was a fucking idiot. And I didn't go. But what I remember explicitly about that was how it didn't matter. I mean, that's what I remembered the most about it was literally millions of people got in the streets and were like, we don't want anything to do with these Middle Eastern wars anymore. And they were right. And the government, you know, we're a free society. That kind of shit would get you disappeared in most of the world. But nothing happened. It's almost like the exact opposite. Talk is cheap, right? We can say it's beautiful. It's the beauty of freedom is we can say whatever we want. And I always say whatever I want. But it didn't even matter when we did. And look at the fucking crime we perpetrated. Not that it's like Ukraine. These are different wars. But in its own way, very violent, deadly, disgusting, cost tons of lives, tons of treasure, tons of whatever. These guys are in a situation where it's literally illegal. What do you want them to do? Like, what do you want them to do? That's my big question is, can someone tell me what they want Mundfish to do?
Yeah,
I haven't really seen any of that.
It's
I do know that they are. I do know. I don't know this actually, but I've just read that they do have connections, both obvious and tenuous, to sanctioned Russian oligarchs and businesses. But I would imagine everyone does in Russia. Like every business, all of the Russian national banks are sanctioned. So of course, you can be a fucking babushka living in Moscow and you're connected to a sanctioned Russian bank. I I'm not saying what's going on. Russia's clearly the perpetrator and doing something really wrong, in my opinion. I don't also pretend to have all of the regional and historical knowledge, which I don't think really anyone talking about this does. But at least I don't pretend that I do. There's certainly more to this situation than meets the eye. I just don't pretend to understand it because I'm not an expert on Ukraine. But I will say that, isn't it kind of cool that they're just trying to operate and give us something and they're not really able to say anything, but isn't their dealing with us kind of showing us that they're friendly with us, reaching out a hand? It's like you were saying in my opinion, with the China Hero project and with PlayStation in China's, those are fists through an iron curtain and allows us to see a little bit of what they can do in their art and all of that. Russia's not nearly as closed, but it might become that way. It is becoming that way as we become more and more detached from each other in this post-Cold War era. And I'm just concerned about why are people so wrapped up in what others tell them they should think and feel? It's just so Ukraine was so that's the biggest example of it to me. I don't know what the fuck we're supposed to be doing over there as Americans, and I'm bummed out that we're sending so many weapons over there and just prolonging the war, and everyone's, so many people are getting killed and we have so much blood on our hands. We didn't have to get involved in this at all. These guys don't really have that option. They are involved. To what extent they can say anything, I just feel like I'm a little bit sympathetic towards it. And we have to ask bigger questions. Like, I wouldn't so much be looking at Mundfish. If you want to follow the money in an effective way, there are two entities that I think you should be talking about in regards to this game. Focus Entertainment, the publisher, and Microsoft, which is putting this game on Game Pass and therefore paid, no doubt, millions of dollars up front to this entity. But I don't understand what else people really expect out of this situation. I'm going to play the fuck out of this game. I'm really excited about it. And one thing that I think is really shitty, and I wanted to call this out, this actually came from the website The Gamer. And they say in part that the game is focused on making Russians look good, or the KGB looking good. It says, quote, "The devs are primarily being asked to comment on a war due to the nature of Atomic Heart, a game that seems to show the Russian military and KGB in a neutral or even favorable light," end quote. And that goes on to say, with the real life Russian military clearly wanting to foster patriotism in the country, many feel that Mundfish should condemn its actions, so Atomic Heart is not complicit in contributing to this nationalism. What are you talking about? First of all, I'm not going to play Atomic Heart and think anything about the Russian military or Russian nationalism because it's a fucking video game. And again, stop trying to pincer every situation, every entity, every game, every company, every product, blah, 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 through the same forced lens. Why do you care so much? If you want to hurt them, don't buy the game. Ignore it.
And
completely.
Unsubscribe to Game Pass. Do it.
Yeah. Shit, man. If you're in Game Pass, your money's going to these motherfuckers. I'll tell you that much right now. Too late. Already did. Too late. So I just wanted to throw that out there. First of all, I think Atomic Heart looks awesome. Second of all, I don't think there's anything wrong with being Russian. I don't know why people, this Russo, what would it be? A Russophobic sort of posture that people think, well, what is this? I have no beef with Russians. We beat them in a bloodless war over 30 years ago, not firing a shot. As far as I'm concerned, we won. It's over.
Yeah.
And the only benefit we get from involving ourselves in this are the hundreds of millions of dollars or billions of dollars going to all of our weapons companies. And so I just find the comparison between the anti-war things here that didn't matter but happened, as opposed to this situation where I'm sure they'd say something, but they cannot.
Yeah.
I don't know. Rock in a hard place, my friends. And I want people to also think about this. When we talk about Saudis or China, we often say it, but of course it's implied, is that we're not talking about Saudi people.
Right.
We're not talking about Chinese people. We're talking about your systems. But for some reason, when we talk about two places, Russia and Israel, when we talk about those two places, it's about crushing the entire culture as if it never existed or something like that. I don't really understand, or like you can't acknowledge it anymore. It's like, what is going on with this? I have no problems with them. Most of the people that are involved in this war in Russia want nothing to do with it either. That's so obvious. They're losing. They're getting their asses kicked.
Yeah.
If anything, it's embarrassing. And I was watching a Vice documentary where it's like maybe 100,000 of them have died already. Dude, that's more than we lost in Vietnam in 1 year.
That's so wild.
So no one's hurting more than the people involved in this war, the Ukrainians and the Russians. And I feel like it's silly for me to expect that Mundfish is going to fucking bring everyone to the table. Maybe they can have the Mundfish declaration and they can bring Vladimir Putin and Zelensky to the table and have them shake hands with each other. But in the meantime, they're making a video game and they're allowed to be nationalist Russians and they're allowed to show whatever they want. I don't know. Well, like, what is wrong with everyone? What the fuck is wrong with everybody?
I think it's just a limited scope of understanding because it's like it's viewing Mundfish as if they're an American developer and can just say these things. You know what I mean? It's just like just the inability to conceptualize what it's like to live in a country where the fucking president, the figurehead, is widely assumed to disappear people, you know? Joe Biden's not going around putting you like if you wear like a "Let's Go Brandon" t-shirt, you're not gonna wake up in like a white van with your organs like in a bathtub next to you. Like it's a very different situation in Russia, and in that part of the world in general. It's fucking crazy. So
well, yeah.
No, I don't know. It's just a lack of scope or a lack of perception.
Have you noticed this mentality? I don't know if you guys have noticed this, where it's like we're fighting them over there, so we don't have to fight them over here. And I'm like, what? The Russians? Like, you get a lot of these things where it's like we're sending all this money over there, and folks are like, this is so much cheaper for us than having to actually fight the Russians. And I'm like, but why are we fighting the Russians? You know, like what are you talking about? It's cheaper than if we actually fought the Russians. What are we doing?
Yeah, I don't know. I got no clue.
No clean drinking water in Jackson, Mississippi. No clean drinking water in Flint, Michigan. And Dustin can't afford to take off time work to get his arm fixed because he doesn't have universal health care.
No health care. No, I do have health care.
Yeah, you do. Yeah, I do too. Shout out to Obamacare, by the way, because I would have never left IGN if Obamacare didn't exist. I wouldn't have been able to do it. But it's not very good. So I hope I don't get ill. All right, let's talk about something else controversial since we're in the frame of mind. This tweet doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah, I tried to check it out.
All right, well, there was a tweet from a guy called Man with Secrets _ great name on Twitter. Basically, it was just the release of Hogwarts Legacies, or the leak of Hogwarts Legacies accompanying artbook. But within the artbook, they basically say that the game is 30 hours long campaign and maybe 70 hours to do everything else. That's all I really wanted to say. I'm really looking forward to playing Hogwarts Legacy. Chris, what do you think about the controversy brewing and kind of blowing up in the faces of the people that want to hurt this game? It's performing extraordinarily well in pre-order.
I think this is what happens when you make a piece of media into a political statement. Regardless of what it is, it's going to get support because now people view it as a cause, and now people view it like there are people who are buying, like, I have no doubt there are people buying multiple copies out of spite because people have told them not to buy it. And this never fucking works. Hatred sold way more copies than it should have, like for a very, very similar reason. And I remember back in the day, like when Kingdom Come Deliverance was getting like a weird amount of publications being like, this is a really offensive thing because there's no minorities in it, and it's like a game that takes place in like what? I don't even remember. Like
in Bohemia in the 1300s. And that game ended up selling a couple million copies, which is incredible.
Well, I remember. And that's a game that probably was not going to do those numbers without that press.
Oh my God, no way.
And so to me, it's just like, I don't understand why people don't learn this lesson, that this is like Streisand effect in full force, where like you can't tell people not to do something on the internet. It is like the basic rule of the internet that when you tell people not to do something, especially online, they're going to do it in droves. Like it is the most repeatable scientific experiment that you can do anywhere on the internet. And so, yeah, it doesn't surprise me, especially because it's a Harry Potter game. So it's already got like a massive amount of attention on it anyway. It doesn't surprise me that it's way above Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2. Of course, there are people buying multiple copies out of spite, which is also, by the way, very dumb. I think a lot of this culture war shit is really stupid. Like there are people online who are like, I'm gonna buy 5 copies to offset. It's like, shut up.
I might buy a bunch of copies to give away to people, but I don't know yet.
It's just
here's because I agree with you. It is stupid. It is stupid. But let me say this, Chris.
Yeah,
is that because it is stupid? But I think we were talking the other day, maybe even on the last episode, about like, things that the truth versus, and we were talking about J.K. Rowling and all this, like the truth, maybe it was a couple episodes ago, the truth versus lies, right? And what's real and what isn't. Here's the thing about this game, and why I think this moment is one worth fighting back over and making a point over, in my opinion. It's all predicated on a lie. Period. Like it's all of this traces back to things that never happened and things that were never said.
In what capacity? Like J.K. Rowling?
Yeah, like I told you guys, I think it's in the Observer or something. I got to find a link to it and share it. Maybe I'll do it on Discord. It was an awesome article by a woman who is against J.K. Rowling, and she was commissioned by her editors to be like, go find what she did. Like, let's do a timeline of what she said and did. And basically the outcome of the article is like, there's nothing. Like there actually is nothing. Nothing was said or done that in any way, shape, or form evokes this level of hatred towards this woman. And it's true. I'm fucking telling you guys, go look. That to me is where truth versus like reality versus fiction intersects. And it's almost to me something worth fighting over, because it's like, what is this? What are you doing? We're gonna injure the people, like just smear the game, do whatever, because of something that never happened.
Well, does she? I mean, because I asked for evidence too, and I got a bunch of stuff that, like, I don't know, some of which I didn't fully agree with, some of which I was like, that's kind of weird. She does, and keep in mind, this is J.K. Rowling, author of Harry Potter. She does go out of her way sometimes to just dogpile like children, like trans, like 15-year-olds on Twitter a lot. Apparently that's like a really, really easy thing to get a rise out of her. And it is something that happens apparently pretty often. I don't know if that's really enough to justify like the amount of outrage personally, because it's just like, I have not seen this because I just don't follow J.K. Rowling, because I don't give a shit about her or anything Harry Potter related. So of course this isn't going to pop up. And I guess she donates money to some questionable organizations. Apparently this is stuff that I've heard. I don't know. It's hard for me to imagine though that all of this came out of nowhere. There had to be something. Like even if it's really minor, it's got to be there. You know what I mean? Like it's such an obscene amount of vitriol that she's drawn that it's hard for me to imagine. Like it doesn't fall out of thin air, does it?
Sorry about that. I was muted, and then Chris thought he was having a technical problem, which is pretty funny. But I do think it's mostly made up out of thin air. You know why I think that is? Because I'm not J.K. Rowling, but
right.
People call me all sorts of things, and it's for no reason. Like there's nothing there, right? Like how many times will someone call me racist or sexist or all these things? And I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about. Like I really have no idea what you're talking about. You're just saying these things, but then someone else, how many people think that about me because they just saw it? Now magnify that with J.K. Rowling,
I guess that still stems from like at least a misinterpretation of something. You know what I mean? That's like still like something that you said might have been misinterpreted by someone else, and then there's like a game of telephone. So what I'm saying is like there has to be something that she said at least at one point that is at the very least got misinterpreted through this like game of telephone into something. And keep in mind, This is literally because I'm trying to avoid the situation of us getting accused of being like this echo chamber again.
Yeah, that's
You know?
fair. I mean, I really think it all stems from the fact that she had a problem with using the term people who menstruate instead of women. I think that's where it all came from.
Mhm.
And I'm like, okay, that seems totally
Yeah,
fine to me.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not educated on. I do. Here's one thing I'll say. Right, I'm not super educated on this. I don't know anything that J.K. Rowling has said. J.K. Rowling didn't develop this game, so I really just don't understand. Like fundamentally, I do not understand. And by the way, I have I have some trans friends who don't like J.K. Rowling either, who think she sucks, and they don't care if you play Hogwarts Legacy either, because they know it's a video game where a lot of people independent of J.K. Rowling worked on it, who have nothing to like. It's just such a silly. I don't know. I just find this line so silly. I think Hogwarts Legacy looks interesting. I'm curious to play it. Will it be great? I don't know. Maybe it'll suck. That's very, very possible. But I'm curious enough to try it out. I'll probably stream it because I know a lot of people are not going to be streaming it for ideological reasons, and I'm fucking absolutely going to capitalize on that. I'm going to fill that vacuum. It's like I'm a scab.
Yeah, do it.
Is what I am.
Yeah, and well, that's what I was saying with this. It's like I want this game to do well because I really just feel like I have a line. And the line is when something just isn't true, you have to do something about that. Like there has to be some way to express yourself. I don't know how else to do it. Maybe I'm doing it on the show as well. Maybe I don't need to go buy copies and give them away to some people to make that point. Maybe I'm doing enough legwork on that. But I just wanted to say that I feel like there's a difference between boycotting something and then just making something up and then boycotting it over what you made up. And I just feel like that's kind of the situation we're in. Anyway, Dustin, do you have anything you want to say before we move on?
I think you guys pretty much covered it. I'm hesitant to say anything fully because of not like I've looked into some of the tweets that she said, and I'm definitely more leaning towards Colin's opinion about them not really being I can see them being offensive, but not to the level of this amount of backlash. But I think that I'm in agreement with both of you in that J.K. Rowling did not make this game. Sure, she may make some money off the royalties, but if nobody decides to buy this game, let's say it sells 0 copies, she's still very, very rich.
That's another thing I want to mention real quick. I know we've spent like 2 episodes kind of on this, but I want to get this point out.
Say whatever you want. Well, we can say whatever we want.
I think we are viewing this entire situation through the lens of our own interactions with money and how much money matters to us as, middle class. I mean, are there even is there even a middle class anymore? But average people, where if we made a game and it sold millions of copies, that would transform our entire lives. This is not. If this game sells more than Call of Duty, I can't even imagine that J.K. Rowling would even notice. J.K. Rowling is so staggeringly rich, it's insane. I don't think people are designed with the brain capacity to really comprehend just how rich J.K. Rowling is and just how much money she has, to the point where, like, if you buy this game, you are not contributing in any real meaningful way to anything that she is doing, any harm that you perceive her to be doing, whether it's the causes she donates to that espouse really harmful beliefs or whatever it is you assume is happening, you are not contributing to that in any real meaningful way at all. She is stupid rich. And I think we kind of view it we view it as if it was happening to us. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, if I made that much money, that would transform my entire life. It's like, yeah, because you don't have your net worth isn't $1 billion.
Yeah, that's about what her net worth is about $1 billion. She's one of the best-selling authors of all time. So
yeah, I don't know. Their relationship with money is so different than ours, and I feel like people really need to comprehend that before they before they talk about this issue, because it's just like it's operating under the assumption that like if this game succeeds, it's going to allow give J.K. Rowling all this power and all this money to do whatever the fuck she wants. It's like she already has that. She's going to do it regardless. This game could flop and she probably won't even care. Because of course she's not a gamer. J.K. Rowling isn't sitting playing fucking League of Legends. Like what the fuck? Like what do you assume? Like she doesn't care. No,
she's
about
not. She's playing the Callisto Protocol.
Can you imagine?
On master difficulty.
Oh my god.
Yeah, I think it's well, I'll be interested to see how this all shakes out. I agree with you that it really does. It's actually an important point that it doesn't ultimately matter to her. I'm sure she'll be happy in her turnkey, whatever the fuck it's called, that does all of her expanded media stuff, will be thrilled about the success of the game, because I mean it's inevitably going to sell very well. But yeah, I don't know. I find strangely, I'm not one to throw these terms around, but I find the attack on J.K. Rowling to be a little misogynistic. Like I feel like it's a little bit crazy how people are have really made her into this supervillain, and I don't know. I just don't really think she's done anything to deserve that, and so sometimes you have to stand up for truth and just like reality, whatever it is. And I think this will be one of those situations for a lot of people. But in the meantime, hey, J.K. Rowling, we wish you well. Oh, by the way, if anyone wants to come on, I said it earlier, but if you missed it, if you are a content creator with an audience, not just like some random person, and I don't mean that as an insult. It's just that I'm not going to invite just random people that I don't know or haven't vetted onto the show. That's the only reason I say this. If you are a content creator of some sort and you have a problem with everything or anything I just said about J.K. Rowling, come on the show and talk about it with me.
Yeah.
I'm explicitly saying you can come on Sacred Symbols Plus and I will either pay you an appearance fee if you want. If maybe you don't care about that. If you need an appearance fee, I'll pay it, or I'll donate to a charity of your choice. But come talk to me about why I'm wrong about J.K. Rowling.
Yeah.
Door is open. Okay.
Hey, Colin.
Yeah.
I know you didn't like it last time I did this. I'm going to risk it anyway. The first writing question would flow right into this.
Oh, okay. Let me see here.
You didn't like me directing the show last time I did.
Well, I appreciate it.
Okay.
Thank you for that. So let's go into the listener inquiries at the end. We'll pull another one. We usually do 6 at the end. We have 5 now. Now we have 4. Thank you for that, Dustin. Ryan Gerson wrote in and said, hello and good tidings. Hogwarts Legacy is nearly upon us. I started thinking, with all the supposed controversy surrounding J.K. Rowling and in turn the game, can we trust reviews on Hogwarts Legacy to be fair? Can we trust these reviews to be fairly or relatively objective? With mainstream gaming media's obvious political bias and social stance and near unified disdain for J.K. Rowling, it feels the game will get slandered no matter how good it is. What do you guys think? Is the game doomed from a critical perspective? The game looks like it's going to sell a butt fucking bucket load no matter what. Whoa. Thanks for all you guys do. I mean, it definitely is going to. I'd be very interested to know how it's mock reviewing. I'd be very, very interested to know that. And thank you again for connecting this, Dustin, because when I was talking about this earlier, I was like, I don't feel like I was supposed to be talking about this at this point in the show, but I didn't know why I felt that way. It's because there was no tweet there that we were supposed to talk about there. So
right.
Thank you for making that connection. So there seems to be a lot of concern about this. In fact, Dustin, you had expressed concern about this. I mean, not that you give a fuck, but concern for me selecting this game in the fantasy draft for Metacritic, where I selected it, I think 3rd, so 9th overall. And I was saying that I'm confident that it's going to be great and that it's going to be reviewed fairly and probably be somewhere in the 8s. But I think that people really believe that this game is going to get the shit beat out of it. And my take on this is that it's like when things can be true back and forth to the point where, okay, so what's going to happen? Like, okay, it's true that there's a bias in games media. It's true that they hate J.K. Rowling. It's true that there's a contention around Hogwarts Legacy, and these things kind of ratchet up and ratchet up and ratchet up. But will it also be true that it is taken out on the game in its reviews? Because if that happens, I feel like that is a trust breaking scenario with a wider gaming audience, because it has no relevance, even tangentially, to the game itself. And I'm sorry.
No,
But-
who are the gaming publications? Like, because I know that there are some publications that are refusing to cover it. Like,
Oh, I don't
Does
know
that-
which ones are specifically doing that, to be honest.
you know that there are a few though, right?
I think so. I'll look.
Because
maybe
that to me
yeah.
is already kind of like maybe that's a good sign, because you could make a good case that like the people who are most likely to beat the shit out of this game in reviews are the same people who aren't going to be reviewing it at all. You know what I mean? Like the very fact that people are going to be reviewing it, or the people who are going to be reviewing it means that they're probably going to be coming at it from a little bit more of a fair perspective than the people who are just outright refusing to cover. That's a plausible scenario.
Yeah, and just searching about it, it's like all I see is NeoGaf talking about Imran Khan and Fanbyte, but Fanbyte went out of business.
Oh yeah, whatever.
I see
It's very
something.
easy to not cover the game when you're company no longer
exactly.
exists.
I see Easy Allies maybe not covering it.
Mm-hmm.
At least there's a thing that says Easy A and Hogwarts Legacy from Reddit, and that they didn't cover the state of play when that was happening in March, so maybe they're not covering it. That's a good point, is that I think people withdrawing from covering it is fine, and I think that that's their right. I think you're dumb if you're not covering Hogwarts Legacy because it's so big, but also I think you're dumb because it's a game in a constellation of games that are being offered to you, and it's up to you to kind of educate the audience as best you can, especially if you're a mainstream outlet. We really do try to gravitate towards the games we're interested in, and everyone knows that listens to this show that I've been expressing deep interest in this game long before the controversy was bubbling, because I kept saying that it was hopefully this nice gateway in a world, Harry Potter, that I've really wanted to get into, but really have not had the gumption to go back and read the books. So for me, I'm interested in it from just that perspective. Mm-hmm. But is there anything that anyone wants to add before we move on from this topic? I'm sure people are.
Yeah, I have something.
Yeah, hit me
so
with it.
Here's I think it is possible that if outlets are saying we're not going to cover the game, that the ones that do choose to will hopefully be more fair. But I just want to, as a reminder about some things we've seen in this industry. Remember the Kotaku review of the PlayStation 5 that said, quote, "As I'm writing this, it looks very likely that Joe Biden will be our next president.
Oh my God.
And it's clear that the worst people aren't going away just because an old white man is sitting behind the Resolute desk. Well, at least not this old white man, blah, blah, blah." I just read from a Kotaku review of a PlayStation 5. And then today, this isn't a review, but I think it's worth pointing out.
Yeah.
As predicted, I hate being right about this. Eurogamer posts an article. Persona 4 Golden has not aged well. Kanji, misogyny, and representation.
Oh my God.
Oh yeah, about the pink menu or whatever.
Pink menu. What?
Isn't that what I remember seeing, like some snippet of a Persona review that was like this: when you select a woman character, your menu is all pink, and it's like, is it saying that pink?
Oh, is that Persona 3?
Yeah, pink is the only color a girl can like, huh? It's like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Everyone just shut the fuck up.
I'm gonna dive headfirst off of the fucking Grand Canyon if this continues. I'm so tired. I'm so exhausted, guys.
That Kotaku review, by the way, is legendary, though. That Ian Walker got fired or laid off from Kotaku. He's never going to work in this industry again. He sucks.
That was so funny.
But I remember he's the one who wrote it, because I've had enmity with him for a long time. He was the one that wrote it about you and me, Chris, or at least one of the guys that did.
Who?
And just smeared us. And
Ethan Gack?
No, that's another one. He still works at Kotaku. This Ian Walker is another guy that wrote about us and didn't like us.
You're right.
And he's the one. So I know he's the one that wrote that PlayStation review, because that review is absolutely legendary.
Right.
It's one of the worst things that's ever been written before. I've written some things that aren't great. I go back and read some of them, like, oh, this could be better. I've made some proclamations, like my Vita proclamations, that were dead wrong, but nothing is as bad as that. You know. So and yeah, go on. I'm sorry.
Well, I want to make sure before we moved on. My main point is these are two very recent examples on why maybe it'll just be fine. But just look at the history. I mean,
we should bet on it. No chance. It's not, no chance.
How many reviews mention J.K. Rowling?
Yeah.
As this controversy as a factor, how many?
Oh, 100% of them, I bet.
Yeah, I would say like 90-something% of them. You'd have to be pretty avant-garde not to do it. I would love to see that review that just doesn't bring it up. And it's like the people that say that not being political is a political choice. It's like, oh, whatever you say, dude. So like, even if you don't bring it up, that is in itself a political choice. So there's going to be that whole meta level of conversation if that happens.
That would technically be correct.
As far as my prediction for the game, I think my Metacritic score prediction 85 is my Metacritic score prediction.
What are you predicting, Dustin?
I don't know. So my concerns about this game have nothing to do also with the reviews. It's still, and I've been saying this for months, is just that I don't know if this team has it in them to make a game of this scale. I'd love to be proven wrong, as always, but I'm going to say closer to 75.
75.
I'm going to guess 32.
Whoa.
That's the user score.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm writing these down for posterity. I'll probably lose this. By the way, I'm writing this on a Post-it that says Leonard Maltin on it.
Like with a question mark?
Yeah, because Dagan and I were talking about him yesterday. I like to write little things to remember to say things. I'm shot. So when you read them when I look at them out of context, I'm like, I don't even know what the hell I was talking about here. When I die, I've saved every one of these that I've ever written in since I became a professional. They're all in boxes. There's probably more than 100 of them at this point, easily. And I'm going to die one day, and people are going to go through these documents, and it's going to be nonsense. The things that people are going to be reading.
Oh yeah.
I can't even imagine what
disparate, discombobulated scratchings of random half-completed thoughts.
Right, exactly. Like just things being checked off and lines crossed out and just random words. Like I just wrote the word humble down. I don't know why I wrote that word down.
Oh well, that's
nerd culture.
That's it. Nerd.
Yep. 1977. This is what my notes. People are going to think that it's going to be like translating the hieroglyphics. People are going to think there's something important here and here, but there really isn't. Okay, my friends, it's time for us to get into what we're playing. I'm excited to hear about your recent video game travails, Chris. Especially you. It says here you're going into Final Fantasy VII Remake, or back, should I say?
Yeah.
The 2020 PS4 banger. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't know. Like I don't remember why I stopped. I think I got pulled away, and then I realized that like, oh, it's going to come to PS5, and then it's going to be at a higher frame rate, and it's like, oh, I should just wait for that. And then when I went to visit it on PS5, my saves didn't transfer, and I could never upload them for whatever reason. They just wouldn't go into the cloud save. So that was like really cool. So I was just like, I don't want to. I just wasn't prepared to go through 16 hours of work again, especially that soon. So I was just like, you know what, I'll wait until I've forgotten a decent amount of this game, and then I'll go back to it with when I feel like it's fresh again. And I guess like with you guys talking about Crisis Core and just generally like a decent amount of time having passed, I've been feeling an itch to kind of get into it again. And so I'm trudging my way through it. I am skipping a lot of cutscenes. I am like I am really playing this game at like 5 times speed. You know, I'm doing what the audience does, because I want to get to where I was, and that was like 16 hours in, which is not like a ton of time, but it's enough to be like really fucking annoying to get back to. So right now I'm just kind of going through the chapters and just trying to get back to where I was. So I don't have really much new to say on it, but it's held up wonderfully, and it just plays fucking great. Especially on PS5, it's just like it's really, really nice to play with that smooth frame rate. And you know, I noticed the door was fixed.
Oh, interesting. No more low res door.
No more low res door, or at least like maybe I just got lucky and it didn't pop up for me. But it's so funny that that's like one of the main things that sticks out to me. But I'm liking it. Final Fantasy VII Remake is awesome. I mean, I remember feeling that way when I first played it. So it's not surprising to me that it's not that old to the point where it's like, oh, this didn't age well. But I'm enjoying it. I just want to get to the point where I was so I can actually continue in a meaningful way. So that's kind of like the frustrating part right now, is I'm just kind of doing things that I vaguely remember. But I'm having a good time playing. Like the combat's so fun.
Well, I'm glad you're enjoying it. For Final Fantasy VII Remake, I said before, when the next one is coming, I'll try to time it so I can play the PS5 version and then the Yuffie DLC, and then go right into the new game to kind of refresh and remind myself. Because I played it back in 2020, as we know, and I loved it, but it is a little vague in the mind at this point, many games ago. Are you going to play Crisis Core, you think, when you're done?
Yeah, I think I might. if I'm able to finish this, I really want to like breeze through this and see if I can get it done in a reasonable amount of time, and then I'll probably play Crisis Core. That's reasonable to play Crisis Core after, right? It's not like crazy.
Definitely.
Yeah. All right.
Crisis Core is very loose and easy to play, and I think you'll enjoy it a lot, actually. All right, Dustin, it says here you're playing some stinky Switch games plus the PS4 port.
Okay. It's been pretty bad in this house. Holly walks in. She says, Dustin, did you shit on the floor? I say, no, I'm just playing Bayonetta 3 on Switch, and boy, is it stinky. I mean it. I know it. I know. I'm joking around here, but I'm also not joking around in that this game, Bayonetta 3, needed, I would like to say it needed more time, but it really had a lot of fucking time, didn't it? Since it was revealed in, I think, 2017 and then finally came out in 2022. This game is weird. I kind of don't really like it, which I also have written here, Bayonetta 2, because I played and totally finished that up, which I know you guys heard me singing the praises of Bayonetta 2 last week and how awesome it was. Bayonetta 3, this one's weird because the reviews for it were pretty positive, not as positive as 2, but really high. Saw a lot of 9s, a lot of 8s in that range, and this game did not hit for me in a lot of different ways. Even from a stylistic standpoint, this game almost feels like a Bayonetta fanfic that like went a little too off the rails in some ways. That's what I was thinking. I was thinking deeply about Bayonetta and how it's a campy game. It's meant to be stupid in some ways. You have Bayonetta at the end of each game, she does a pole dance, okay? Like it's meant to be dumb. But there's some moments in this game that it's too dumb. It's like if there was a meter of like cringe and campiness, which is a very delicate balance, this one doesn't get it quite right. And it also has this problem in that it consistently has you not playing as Bayonetta. And I'm not just saying playing as other characters. This game's main mechanic is that you can summon demons. And when you have a demon summoned, you don't play as Bayonetta. You play as the summoned demon. And this is kind of neat if it happened sparingly, but you're doing this multiple times a battle.
Oh, no.
And this game also suffers from, it's like they took a step back, because I mentioned how Bayonetta 1 had all these weird like game mechanics, like side things where they're doing like these, like you're riding on a missile or something like that. This game has all kinds of weird stuff where it's like, hey, this is a third person shooter right now for a second. Oh, right now we're making you do a giant kaiju battle that's like rock, paper, scissors in slow motion. This game has so many ideas. It's like a million ideas at once, and very few of them work. And when they do, they feel kind of half-baked. And I think that it's weird because, like I said, I seem to have disliked this game a lot more than the overall general consensus of critics. But it's very disappointing. When I finished it, I thought, man, I hope they make a sequel to Bayonetta 2. I hope they make Bayonetta 2, because whatever this is wasn't it. So a little bit disappointing.
How did Jennifer Hale do? Whoever the hell does the
fantastic. Yeah. And without getting into story stuff, it makes a lot more sense about a lot of that controversy and what went down. But I thought she was fantastic. She sounded the part exactly. It was slightly different, but in a way that makes sense in context of the story. So I'll leave it at that.
Fair enough.
And then last but not least, Persona 4 Golden. I literally just played it this morning, a tiny bit, maybe 25 minutes, because I just wanted to see how it looked running. And to no surprise, it looks fantastic. I'm pretty sure it's 4K 60. It's exactly what you would want, a perfect port of Persona 4 Golden. Obviously, I have a lot more to go. Maybe there's stuff that could go wrong with it. But from what I can tell, this is basically the PC port pushed over to PlayStation. And I know we've said it a lot of times on the show, but this is a very, very special game. And particularly if you've already played Persona 5, you really, really should go check this game out as well. It is, I guess, somewhat dated from a gameplay perspective when you're comparing it directly to Persona 5. It might be a little tough to go back, but in my opinion, this game has stronger characters and overall more in. I don't want to say it's a more intriguing story. I like this game better than I like Persona 5. And I think Persona 5 is amazing. One of the greatest games ever. But there's something special about this game that I can't quite describe. And I especially can't get into without getting into spoilers. So if you're even mildly interested in this game, it's only $20. Check it out.
What a deal, dude. I think that's such an appropriate price.
Yeah.
And
oh, yeah.
I don't know that I'll play. I love Persona 4, but just played it on Vita. Might play Persona 3, but I definitely will, but I just don't know when that's going to happen. And then maybe I'd get back to this and play it again at some point in the future. 4K 60 sounds pretty cool. How about that soundtrack?
Oh, it's so good. And that's
Signs
the thing is,
of love overshadows my dreams.
Yeah, dude.
Baby, don't.
I had to buy it.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
The soundtrack, I had to buy it on vinyl.
Oh,
it's
so
that good.
It's so good.
It's a 10 out of 10 soundtrack.
Here's pass through.
Yeah.
My voice fucking cracking. Oh, I love that. Dude, I love that soundtrack. Persona. I listen to the Persona 4 soundtrack when I work out sometimes. So many good tracks on there.
Have you heard the Persona 5 soundtrack at all?
No. Because I want to, do it all at the same time.
Yeah. That's the thing. I want to tell people to check out the soundtrack to intrigue you, but hearing it in game is awesome. Particularly in Persona 5, there's some moments where there's certain songs that are full vocal tracks that are amazing that they hold till like 70 hours into the game. And when you hear them in the game, it's so awesome. It's worth not hearing them until that moment.
I wanted to play Persona 4 Dancing All Night when it came to Vita.
Oh, yeah.
Well, not at the time it came to Vita. I could, but I heard that a lot of the songs are like remixed. Like it's not the same songs. I'm like, that sucks. The fuck are you talking about? Why would I want to play the game where it's remixed versions of the songs? When I read that, I was like, that's I'm sure it is, but
it's got
bangers.
My stamp of approval, Colin.
What is it? I'm sorry.
It's got my stamp of approval.
Oh, okay.
I think it has
mushroom stamp of approval.
If you want it to be.
Yeah.
But no, some of the they are remixes, but a lot of them are actually really, really good. That's one of the rare, dude, that's a Dustin Furman Platinum right there. Persona 4 Dancing All Night on Vita.
Good for you, my friend.
Yeah.
All right. As for me, I'm playing Evil West. I beat it last weekend and I really liked it. And so I started a new game plus on Evil difficulty, which is the hardest difficulty level. And there's 16 chapters. I think on chapter 10. I only started dying the last couple of chapters in it. I was actually being like, this isn't so bad. And then I started dying. Like you just can't take any damage, but this game, it's really fun. The more I play it, the more I want to recommend it to people. I feel like it's got a lot of interesting personality, Wild West vampirism. It's kind of alternate history. The late 19th century presidents and everything are mentioned in it. And some of them are even in it. And it's just like, it's so strange. And the gunplay and the gameplay is really good. The fusion of action, third-person action with shooting and some of those mechanics that the enemy designs are quite grotesque and interesting. I don't know. I like this game, and I had that thing pop up and down just in case there was any issues there. And I'm talking to Dustin for our Zencaster purposes. But so I want to recommend this game to those that might be interested. At least go check out a trailer, see what it is. See some of the gameplay, take a look at it. Am I going to platinum it? I think I might. And if I do, I think it'll be one of my rarest platinums, which is pretty interesting. I still think my rarest platinum is BioShock Infinite on PS3, or at least one of them is.
Did you have to do the 1999 mode for that? Yeah,
without dying.
Oh my god, that's insane.
You can save scrub, so like you could just save. Like you just can't use the Vita chambers or whatever, But
yeah.
Because I platinumed BioShock 1. I platinumed BioShock 1 and BioShock Infinite twice on PS3 and PS4 each. And I found those platinums I love those games. They're so fun. The first BioShock platinum is so good.
That is a good plot. I have that one too.
Yeah. That's good shit. Anyway, shout out to Evil West. Shout out to Flying Wild Hog. Love it. Shout out to Focus Entertainment as well, who we were talking about. They're the same company that is publishing Atomic Heart, so you might have some beef with them. But as far as Evil West is concerned, this is the kind of game where I'm like, yeah, how much did this cost? What did this cost? $25 million to make? How many copies do you need to sell? I mean, selling 500,000 over a year would probably be a huge success for them. This is the pocket that I think being in it for these various companies is pretty good. And we're going to talk about a game in a little while that's not even anywhere as good as Evil West, costs more and probably costs 6 times more to make. But we'll get to that in a second. All right, so shout out to Evil West. Going to move on to Dead Space Remake. That will be out by the time we talk again, actually. So hopefully I'll have more to say about that next week. All right, guys, let's get into the news. There are a few important pieces of news to get into. The first one is one we've known about for a while, whether it's because of leaks or so on. So let's get into it. Number one, after seemingly endless rumors, hints, and even outright confirmations, it's finally been solidified. Returnal is coming to PC, and it's coming very soon. It'll launch on February 15th. Returnal was previously a PlayStation 5 exclusive, a third-person shooter roguelike made very much in the tradition of Housemarque's arcade classics, but with deeper gameplay and narrative spins. Indeed, Housemarque delivered on Returnal to such a degree that PlayStation finally purchased the team after a decade and a half of continuous second-party development, including on hits like 2007's Super Stardust HD and 2010's Outland on PS3. I didn't mean to say Outland. That was a Ubisoft game. What I meant to say was Dead Nation there. The PS4 launch game Resogun, and more recently, the seldom discussed 2017 PS5 exclusive Matterfall, which I have not played. Returnal sales haven't been revealed since the summer of 2021, but are assumed to be somewhere above 1 million. Now, for this PC release, according to a post on the PlayStation blog, developer Climax Studios, which is responsible for the port, and which of course has credits on the original PS5 game, has added NVIDIA DLSS and AMD FSR, quote, allowing you to dial up your frame rate without compromising on resolution, end quote. Returnal on PC supports 21:9 ultra-wide and 32:9 super ultra-wide resolutions, and an SSD is recommended regardless of your PC's potential power. Running the game at 720p and 60 frames will require a minimum of 16 gigs of RAM. So this is obviously a very demanding port. And obviously you can use the DualSense to play on PC, though mouse and keyboard will be a tantalizing option for most. We're all big fans of Returnal here. And Dustin, let's go to you first. What do you think about this game coming to PC? Are you interested in checking it out over there?
Yes, I am interested. I think I will wait, though, just because there's so many new games coming out that it doesn't feel like a good use of my money to buy it full price now when I won't be able to play it right now. Not about, I bought Returnal for full price on PS5, so I'll just wait a little bit. But I am very excited about this because it sounds like there's a lot of love and care being put into this port. Having DLSS and the AMD FSR in there right out the gate is awesome. It's got ray tracing. It will be really interesting to see how this game handles on various PCs, because as you mentioned, the minimum amount of RAM required is 16 gigs, which for the most part, I think that most people, if you're gaming on a computer, probably have 16
That's for
gigs.
720, by the way.
Well, that's the minimum when they have the minimum spec, because their RAM won't have anything to do with your resolution.
Gotcha.
The RAM, the theory, and I think we talked about this when it got announced, the theory about the RAM situation is that that's their way of bypassing some of the special PS5 SSD, is that they're going to load large portions of the game into your RAM, which is why they need to have that. You need to have 16 gigs, because that's their way of getting around it. So it'll be, like I said, it'll be really interesting to see how this game performs on, like, is 16 gigs enough? Because I think that the recommended spec was like 32, which is pretty insane. So
Yeah.
I'll be interested in that. And obviously, mouse and keyboard for this game is a match made in heaven. Like, I that's the main thing for me, is I want to play this game with a more tactile feel, at least for me, with the mouse and keyboard. So definitely at some point we'll be checking this out.
Chris, what are your thoughts on Returnal finally being revealed?
Yeah, I mean, I feel pretty similarly to Dustin. Like, it is something that I'm curious to check out. I don't know if I'll get to it right away. But mouse and keyboard, man, it's a tantalizing option for sure. Like, it is my one issue with Returnal, really. The main one that impacted gameplay the most for me, outside of just kind of the RNGesus at play during certain runs, was just the fact that I felt like I could never get the sensitivity as high as I wanted. Because I played the game, I'm pretty sure at like max sensitivity, and I always felt like I just want to go a little bit faster. So being able to do that's going to be dope, but I'm probably going to hold off on it for a while. There's a lot to play in the meantime, and also I've already played it. I already paid full price for it. Just feels reasonable to wait.
Yeah,
But
I would agree.
if you haven't played Returnal before and you have a BVPC, highly recommended.
Oh
It's a
yeah.
really solid game. It's probably like the best gameplay oriented PlayStation first party title in my opinion.
Yeah, I would actually agree.
Sure.
I mean, the game ate me alive. There was something I remember we discussed it on the show at the time where I was bad at it until I was good at it, and it just kind of snapped in me. And then I think I spent more than 70 hours with it, which is a pretty long time to play it. Now I'm very slow with games, and I play a lot of games for a long time, but I really came to like it. Now I'm a huge Housemarque fan, and that's why I gave it so much of my time, because I knew there must have been something that I was missing. And indeed, there was something I was missing. What I think it's so interesting, though, and Dustin, you had brought up just the power necessary, is that this does seem to be a game unlike the others, although they all look good and they all can push a beefy rig, is that this seems to be some sort of like touchstone PlayStation game on PC for them. Like this is like a high res, high functioning, need a really nice computer sort of game. And I'll be interested to see the kinds of people that adopt it. Like, will the what is that Eurogamer show called? Why can't I think of it? The
Digital Foundry.
Digital Foundry. Well,
Yeah.
the audience for that kind of stuff, will they like buy in on Returnal on PC in a major way? I mean, not in a way that's going to sell millions of copies by any stretch of the imagination, but because it's that game that it's like having a sports car and then going to a racetrack and being like, oh, this is why one might have a sports car, as opposed to driving the sports car on the road, where it doesn't make quite as much sense. Anyway, I think it's really exciting that Housemarque is bringing this over. It's been an open secret for a long time. It was in the NVIDIA leak, I believe, as well. So that's another one we can check off the box. But Blue Moose wrote into us and said, hey, super slutty sex dolls. With the recent release date announcement for Returnal coming February 15th and The Last of Us Part 1 on March 3rd to PC, which franchise do you think is next? I'm really hoping for Ratchet and Clank personally. Be curious about all your thoughts on what Sony may bring next to PC. Love all the amazing content and stay studly, my sexy beast. Ratchet would be interesting. That game is very reliant on the SSD as well. Although maybe not as much as Returnal is. I don't really know, to be honest with you. But that could be an interesting next option. Chris, what comes to mind for you as far as what the next game might be?
Man, I've been thinking about this for a while. I wonder if this is around the time that we are going to start seeing maybe the release window between console launches and PC releases get shorter. And so the game that I first thought of was actually Ragnarok. Like, I could see Ragnarok coming out at the end of the year. Like, that wouldn't necessarily surprise me. I know they could stand to like milk it for a couple more years, especially as PS5 sell. But we know that the time frame between console launch and PC release is getting shorter and shorter. And I just wonder, like, the mathematics of like what falls within a reasonable window. And honestly, I'm not sure. Like, nothing comes to mind outside of God of War to me.
6, 7. I'm just counting. There's 6 games. 7. Hold on. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So there are, since 2020, there have been 8 first party and second party games, 6 first party and 2 second party games to come to PC, and 2 more have been announced, both from the first party.
Yeah.
So we have a few options here. Dustin, I wonder what you think could be do you think it's Ragnarok? You think that's a viable option?
I think they'll hold on Ragnarok for a good while, as it's probably still a big system seller for PlayStation 5. And I think that there's just some gaps that they would like to fill in. I'm still surprised that Ghost of Tsushima hasn't been one that they've pushed quite yet. I would imagine maybe they're waiting until they can kind of get some synergy with a movie or a new game or something like that. I think another thing to consider is GT7 as a game that they want to move over to PC. Just with the space of the PC of the racing sim getting much more competitive, particularly with the it's called iRacing, right, Colin?
Mm-hmm.
iRacing on PC really starting to dominate. They probably need to look at PC as a platform for that game. So there's a lot of options, and there's even like PS4 games like Last of Us Part 2 that would make sense for them to at least start thinking about pushing over to PC as well, particularly with the show. So I think they'll hold on Ragnarok for now, but I don't know. we'll see. Like I said, I'm surprised about Ghost of Tsushima not being here yet.
Yeah, that seems to be maybe a good option as well. I have a list here of games that they've published on PC since 2015. So 2015, Helldivers, which was random. 2016 was Everybody's Gone to the Rapture, which was also random. That was the Chinese Room and XDev. 2017 was nothing. 2018 was Guns Up, which was also on PS4 and was supposed to come to Vita but got canceled. 2019 was Ready Set Heroes, which is also on PS4. And then it started to pick up in 2020. So 2020, Horizon Zero Dawn, and then the second party game Predator, Hunting Grounds. 2021 was just Days Gone. So Horizon was done by Guerrilla, Days Gone was done by Ben. And then in 2022, God of War, and then Miles Morales and Spider-Man Remastered. That was Nix's. Sackboy: A Big Adventure from Sumo. That was a port of the PS4 and PS5 game. And then Uncharted Legacy of Thieves Collection, which was from PS5. And then announced so far for this year, Returnal and The Last of Us Part 1. So obviously they're going to ratchet this up. As we noted on their last financials, that they expect to make $300 million in their fiscal year, which ends at the end of March. On PC games, I think they might have the money that they need already based on these games, but more are certainly coming. I think Ghost of Tsushima is a good answer. Ratchet would be pretty interesting as well. And also Horizon Forbidden West, I think, would be an obvious one as well, since the first Horizon's there as well. And Horizon came out before God of War, so you would want to go in that order. Okay. Shout out, by the way, to Returnal and Housemarque. Go play it, as Chris and Dustin had already recommended. If you haven't played Returnal, I really do highly recommend it. Okay. Number 2. In perplexing news emanating out of South Korea, it appears that the Callisto Protocol has missed its sales forecast significantly. Making this matter even stranger is how much publisher Krafton reportedly spent developing the game, which we'll get to momentarily. According to website K-Odyssey, reporting from Seoul, publisher Krafton anticipated 5 million copies sold lifetime for the game, but will not reach 2 million sold until sometime this calendar year. K-Odyssey garners this information from fellow South Korean firm Samsung, which released a stock report that also notes that a third firm, Korea Investment and Securities, cut its sales forecast of the Callisto Protocol in half. Now, 2 million copies sold wouldn't be half bad, especially considering the game's soft reviews and critical consternation. Complicating issues, however, is how much Krafton spent on the project. Using its fully owned developer Striking Distance, in addition to external studios, including from PlayStation's family, Krafton reportedly spent somewhere in the ballpark of $160 million on the game. If true, this is an outrageous sum for a roughly 8-hour game that frankly doesn't have all of the bells and whistles of AAA. It's also an insane amount of money because the game was only in development for 3 years. This is akin to the amount of money PlayStation would spend on an exclusive in the PS4 generation, and it is 3 times more than publisher 505 Games is giving to developer Remedy for Control 2, which will frankly and obviously almost certainly be better and more robust and more popular. It's unclear what the status of Striking Distance is, led by Dead Space and Call of Duty dev Glenn Schofield, or if they'll get a chance to make a sequel, though DLC is apparently coming. But as of now, PUBG publisher Krafton is in the red on this project and may never make its money back. To break even, they would need to sell perhaps 1.5 million more copies of the game at full price, an unlikely, if not entirely impossible proposition. David D wrote in and said, "Hello, DCC. I found myself truly gobsmacked at the news that Callisto Protocol needed to sell 5 million copies to be successful, with the budget seeming to be around $160 million. I'll be honest, this might be the most incredible gaming news story I've read in a very long time. What do you guys think about it? It's especially strange because you actually softened my very negative thoughts on the game with discussions on game scope and budget, but this surely changes the calculus." Yes. In fact, I was so perplexed by this number. Benji Sales, a friend of the show, tweeted it out, and I saw it with him first. And I DM'd him, and I was like, this can't be right. Like, there's no way this game cost that much to make. And I went to the source and went back and went as far back as I could, and it says what it says. I mean, whether or not it's accurate, it says what it says. That is a perplexing and fucking crazy amount of money to spend on the Callisto Protocol. I thought the Callisto Protocol was maybe made for... I felt like it was probably more expensive than it really should have been. Maybe $100 million, but certainly less than that. 160 burned through in 3 years is... That's like what the biggest publishers do with their biggest studios. I don't know what they were doing here. Chris, what do you think about this this catastrophically missed forecast?
Yeah, I mean it's perplexing. I just don't know where that money went in any real meaning. Like, there's not. And I mean, we talked about it in spoiler casts and obviously on the show before, but I don't know. I think the Callisto Protocol is a fairly competent game. You know, it's fine. It's like it's a solid 7. You know, but to me, it's like $160 million for what we got is out, especially when you compare it to something like Control, which Control looks pretty damn good a lot of the time, and it plays really damn well. And there's a lot of content in there, like a staggering amount of content in comparison. It's actually like wild. I just don't know how I don't know where the money went.
I don't either. I feel like, and trying to read between the lines, I feel like we know that they did mocap at PlayStation. We know that PlayStation Malaysia contracted on it. That alone doesn't come cheap. That's not like going and getting contract work or help with environments and all of this from random dev houses or independent studios. You're working with PlayStation. And as I said on a previous podcast, that's why I feel like there was marketing for PS4 and PS5 with this game, something to do with that deal. What I feel like is they might have, and I noticed this in the credits, was the credits were extensive in the game. And credits are extensive in a lot of games, so it's not necessarily a huge deal in and of itself. But I noticed where I was like, what did all these people do? This isn't... I like the Callisto Protocol. I thought it was totally fine. I think we probably liked it more than most people did and would like to see more of it, which I think is almost impossible to imagine that that's going to happen. But I don't know how you make an 8-hour game. And it matters how long it is because that's how much content's in it. So it's not like you had a team working on a 25-hour campaign. You had everyone focusing on this very narrow, linear slice of the game. It seems to me, knowing what I know about game development, impossible that they spent that much money on what that product became. Like, I don't... Or this is the final canary in the coal mine, or actually not the final, the first canary in the coal mine of what Sean Layden warned years ago, that games are going to start being released with bloated budgets like this that don't really show, and it's going to become this race that no one can win. And maybe the Callisto Protocol is the first example of that. And there could be more examples of this. We don't get many game budgets. We often assume based on how games sell and then what projects get greenlit in the future and what developers stick around and what don't, how everything does. But here we have a specific number. And that's why I brought up Control 2, because Remedy is one of the only studios that talks openly about how much their games cost to make. And so when you look at a game like Control 2, which I think we all know is going to be way better than the Callisto Protocol in every way, and probably 3 times longer, nonetheless, a higher production value thing, and they're making it for $50 million, something's wrong with that.
And the first one was 25, I think.
Yeah, $25 million. Yeah.
What? Out of curiosity, what was your, like, when you finished the Callisto Protocol, what did you assume the budget was?
Yeah, it's
because
like I said, I would say below $100 million. Like 75 or 80 million, something like that.
Right, exactly. Like my guess was like around 70 to 80 million. Like when I finished it, I was like, okay, that's not, that's not nothing, but it's, you could make that money back if enough people. But like 100, that's double.
Yeah, they would basically be not super in the black, but okay if the game costs that much. And it's like I said, like the game to me doesn't even read like it should have cost that much. I just think that that's how much they spent, because you can just see there are certain elements of it that are very high quality, like the motion capture, the facial animations, things like this that were obviously done outside and by PlayStation probably, which is why, again, it costs so much.
Well, here's something interesting, Colin, about that.
Please.
I'm looking at Striking Distance website, and I'm looking at their page that says studio. Nestled in the heart of the East Bay, our space features a state-of-the-art motion capture studio, top-of-the-line equipment, a luxury dailies room, and a well-stocked kitchen. So they bought a motion capture studio.
Yeah, they might have might do smaller mocap in there or whatever. The only reason I know that is because Michael Mumbauer, I think, and others have talked about it, because he was still at Visual Arts when this was happening.
Mm-hmm.
So, because those guys were involved in it as well. So yeah, I just think that I don't know what they were thinking. Like if I were there looking at the game they had and then how much they spent on it and what their expectations were in just the hypothetical, like this is what we're going to do, this is what we think the game's going to be, I'd be like, you got to either give them something like 2 more years to make the game at that price, to make sure it's really AAA quality, or you need to cut your sales forecast and your budget in half and see what you can get on that. I just don't get this, because it's a pretty vacant game. That's part of what makes it fun, but it's a pretty vacant game, and there's nothing about it that reads $160 million. I mean, nothing.
No.
Like I said, the fire in the game is awful. Like that, certainly they didn't spend any money on that. We know that the $160 million definitely didn't go to the fires in the game.
It's a PNG of a fire.
Right. They had to go to get some freeware because they were out of money. They spent too much.
I have a question that may potentially be ignorant, but I'll ask it. Is it possible, with them being a new studio in the San Francisco area, that part of the budget of this game was setting up a brand new studio in one of the most expensive places in the entire world?
Yeah, it could be.
Is that considered part of the budget?
East Bay, right? So that's like the suburbs. So,
yeah,
but more expensive than what it would be to build everything anywhere else. I mean, the important thing though is, and this is just the reality, unfortunately, is they built the team in 2019. COVID happened in 2020, but they felt like they probably had to be there to attract talent, you know? And I think that the situation has just manifestly changed, which is why keeping overhead is so important. I don't even know that. I mean, there are fully remote developers, like Moon Studios is a fully remote developer, but I just think more people should embrace that and get rid of this overhead. If they didn't have their overhead and they could have a truly global workforce, including, frankly, workforces in parts of the world that just make less money, you probably could have gotten this game done on a much more reasonable budget. I just personally think that number is so insane that I literally told Benji, I was like, there can't be. It's not like something I'm saying about a game I'm looking around from the outside. I played that game. I platinumed it. 160 million?
Wild.
I don't know about that. Where? How? Moving on. Are we done with this topic, by the way?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. We're never getting a sequel, by the way, for that, Chris.
No, probably not.
Oh, there's
That's
no way.
insane.
There's no way.
Insane. Yeah. If it was cheaper, I think we might have actually. But like that's just it's double what I thought it was. The
shitty thing is that there's probably some sort of sunk cost in the sense that they've established their tool set and the parameters of the world and all that, and that does cost some money. Just like in pre-production and in all of that, you can get rid of that cost, but the cost of the new game would probably be exactly the same. I mean, I think that my theory is it cost so much because they had a tight timeline. And they contracted so much of it out. They're a studio of, I think, 100 people. So if they made it internally with just some outside help a little bit here and there, everyone gets outside help. And they did it in 5 years, you could imagine a situation where maybe it costs less. Plus, if they spent more time, they wouldn't have had to port it to PS4 and Xbox One. They could have just done next gen versions. But I don't know. It's Monday morning quarterbacking. It's done. But I would imagine that they're not going to last. I would imagine they're done. We'll see. They're going to get out that DLC first, since they promised it to everyone, which was stupid. Number 3. On this podcast, we've talked on and off over the years about PlayStation's nascent mobile initiative, what its plans are, what products may arise out of it, and even some seemingly ignored duds like that Wipeout game from a year or two ago that seemingly came and went without a murmur. Well, as confirmed by a press release, the next mysterious mobile game draws near. It's called Ultimate Sackboy, based on the famous Little Big Planet character. It's coming to both iOS and Android, and it'll launch on February 21st. It's described as a, quote, mobile free-to-play running game, end quote. And it's developed by a studio called Exient, which the press release calls Exient, which may be a typo. I love seeing typos in press releases. Like, no one noticed this? The British mobile studio's previous work includes licensed Lemmings and Dancing with the Stars games, as well as Angry Birds Transformers. On its official Google Play page, the description is as follows, quote, play as iconic hero Sackboy as he takes on the legendary Ultimate Games, the most prestigious and craziest obstacle racing tournament in all of Craft World. Can you slide, dodge, and weave past classic Sackboy enemies and surpass your rivals to win cool prizes, all while looking stylish, end quote? It's important to note that this game doesn't seem to be part of the larger PlayStation Mobile initiative, with numerous mentions of this being licensed. You may also have played it, or at least had access to it. Random territories like Australia, Canada, and South Africa have been privy to closed testing since December. As far as I can tell, there's no trophy support. PlayStation's not the publisher. I don't know what this is. Dustin, talk to me about Ultimate Sackboy.
Hey, Chris, you remember playing Temple Run in 2011. Remember that?
I remember seeing it.
Well, now you can play it again as Sackboy. I watched the trailer for this. Here's the problem. As gamers, hardcore gamers, right? We're
capital G.
Capital G gamers.
Gamers with a hard R.
Capital G and a hard R.
We are predisposed to hating mobile games, right? We're supposed to hate them. And whatever, maybe that's true. But I can't help but be extra annoyed that it's like, dude, you've got access to this IP and you're just going to make a clone of a game that was a hit in 2011. And that's it. You're just taking the runner formula, just slap Sackboy on it and call it a day. PlayStation, this is important IP worth millions of dollars. And you're just willy-nilly, whatever. Here, make a Temple Run clone. I don't know. I know that we're supposed to hate mobile games. I like some mobile games and, whatever. But they should, if they're going to have this PlayStation prestige that they want to show off to everybody, if they want to be like this HBO of gaming or whatever, then you got to take care of your IP. And this is an embarrassment.
Yeah, it's. I think it's even weirder because if memory serves, this isn't even the first Sackboy runner. There was that game.
I think you're right.
I think there was a game called Run Sackboy Run.
Yeah,
and during the PS4 era, it might have been on Vita as well. And so this isn't even the first time this and PlayStation, I think, actually published that one. So it's strange. See, my problem with this is I don't mind this stuff existing. It's like that weird Wipeout game, the Sackboy runner. It's like, whatever. What is the unified approach to this? You keep saying, like Cry and Jim said multiple times, mobile is important. Like, we're going to have mobile initiatives. You'll see more about this, but we actually haven't seen more about any of it. Unless you're talking about Wipeout, which I don't even know what happened to that game. And then this. Because these are the only two things that have come out since then. Neither of them published by PlayStation. Remember we were joking about Wipeout, where the Wipeout literally doesn't say anything about Sony or PlayStation anywhere. Like, Sony doesn't want anything to do with it. It's clearly licensed; they own it. But why are you licensing these things out? What is the point? Are they just basically saying, how much did this game cost to make? Like $1 million or less? I don't know. Whatever. And they're like, who cares? Let's just see what happens. It could be that kind of, I just wipe my ass with this money. Let's just see what happens. Maybe you come up with something that's useful. We just don't use it. We just scrap it. No one pays attention to it. But these things do keep popping up. And I just want to know what the unified approach is, because I'm interested in real PlayStation mobile games. If you're going to do something, then I don't like mobile games, but there are real mobile games. I think we can all agree that there are real mobile games, including like a real Call of Duty game, an AR Pokemon game. I mean, they're doing things with phones. So show me what you can do with your products if this is a space you want to dwell in. If not, don't bother. But let's not do half measures, or this is like a 10th measure.
Yeah.
Give us a real Little Big Planet game.
They're not going to do that.
No,
Impossible.
of course not.
They're not going to do that. The mobile games market is all 10th measures. Like, that's kind of the problem. Is it's just like you're like, why bother trying in a market that seems to not really value that? Like, what's the point? It kind of reminds me of that, like, I'm sure you've probably seen some people talking about this, but that Velma show that like everybody hates?
The HBO show. Yeah.
Like, that's a show that like exists purely to get hate watches. Like there's no quality to it. It's like there's no reason for it at all. It's literally just like the lowest common denominator because people need something to watch, and people are and these entities are starved for content. So it's like, we'll green light this show. It doesn't matter if they know how to write or anything. Like, it doesn't matter. The end quality doesn't matter. They just need something to distract you while you're fucking taking a shit on your toilet or fucking falling asleep. And the same thing, it's what mobile games are. It's like, what are people really sitting down and sitting at their desk or like lying in their bed and playing mobile games for like hours at a time. No, they're playing it on like the bus in between trips, or they're playing it like in an Uber in between doing things that they care about, or they're playing it in bed to, again, nod off and fall asleep. That's the only reason I play games on my phone at all. It's like a fucking Xanax. It's like, I don't know what, I could be playing like the most high octane game in the world on my phone, and for whatever reason it's a lullaby to me. Just puts me right the fuck to sleep. And it's that's all that entire market is. I know people talk about like really good mobile games, and I'm sure there are some, maybe. Like, I know Pokemon Go is like an interesting one. I still think that game like largely was not very good. But like, I don't know, man. I have so... I struggle to remember or imagine a game that I had a good time playing on a phone. Like, I really just straight up can't remember.
Well, I think we'll see more, hopefully, sooner rather than later, Dustin, because PlayStation did buy Savage Game Studios last year,
That's
and
right.
that's a mobile team out of Europe. And so there's obviously something going on that they want to get off the ground, but I just these half measures with your own IP, it just, most people don't look at things like we do. They don't care. They don't have the knowledge. They just see it and think that that's your shit. If I saw a Sackboy product, I'd either think it was just a pirated thing that no one has caught yet, or it came from you. That it's just, that is all separated by a license, and you're letting this team do whatever they want to do. I don't know. It just seems insufficient to me and incongruent with the larger strategy of strengthening PlayStation, which is, I don't see how this does anything like that.
They don't care about the game to promote it or talk about it, but they do care enough to make sure that we don't get an interview with a developer.
Right. Exactly. That's true. That's a good point.
Wow. Amazing.
That was weird. That was a weird one. All right. Let's get into some sales data. Number 4. As it does each and every month, the NPD Group has released game, software, and hardware sales data for the United States, this time for the month of December 2022. It also released data for the entirety of the calendar year. First, December. In December, Modern Warfare 2 was again the overall best-selling game in the US, with God of War Ragnarok slotting in at 3rd, Sonic Frontiers at 6, Need for Speed Unbound at 8, Crisis Core Reunion at 10, the Callisto Protocol at 17, and Gotham Knights at 20. Crisis Core outsold the Callisto Protocol. If narrowed down to just PlayStation platforms, these were the best-selling games across PS4 and PS5 for the month in order: Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2, God of War Ragnarok, Madden NFL 23, FIFA 23, Need for Speed Unbound, Crisis Core Reunion, NBA 2K23, Elden Ring, Sonic Frontiers, and the Callisto Protocol. And now, for the 2022 calendar year, the best-selling game of the year in the US was Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2. The top 5 is rounded out by Elden Ring, Madden NFL 23, God of War Ragnarok, shout out, and Lego Star Wars The Skywalker Saga. Other notable games include Horizon Forbidden West at 9, MLB The Show 22 at 10, Gran Turismo 7 at 13, Sonic Frontiers at 16, and Gotham Knights at 17. When accounting only for PlayStation platforms, these were PS4's and PS5's best-selling games in the US in 2022 in order: Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2, God of War Ragnarok, Elden Ring, Madden NFL 23, Horizon Forbidden West, FIFA 23, MLB The Show 22, Gran Turismo 7, Lego Star Wars The Skywalker Saga, and Miles Morales, a 2020 game. So those are that's the NPD data for physical and digital software in the US. Guys, I mean, we were just talking about the Callisto Protocol. Crisis Core Reunion came out a week and a half after the Callisto Protocol did and outsold it. Not good.
No.
Not good for the Callisto Protocol at all. But any thoughts, Dustin, on the sales data? Anything stick out to you?
Just still shout out to Elden Ring's huge success. Still a surprise looking back. I feel like, man, Elden Ring is kind of, whether you're into the game or not, I feel like it's kind of the game that defined the entire year. The surprise when it came out and its lasting impact, and then of course winning lots of Game of the Year awards. So just cool to see that continual glow up from Software.
Yeah, again, just to note, Elden Ring outsold the Callisto Protocol in its launch month. Elden Ring has been on the market for 10 months. It's
holy hell.
Yeah, it's very strange out there. And what stuck out to me, Chris, I don't know if you have anything you want to add, but just the PlayStation games on the top 10 NPD, they're making a lot of the 100% money games. And the only and what I mean by that for people out there that are confused, it's like no 70-30 split when you're publishing on your own platform. But when it's funny, it gets way more extreme. When you look at Nintendo, 9 out of 10 of them were published, of their top 10 games were published by them. So they are just making so much money on Switch, not having to share it with anybody. Anything stick out to you here?
Yeah, I mean, just the PlayStation dominance is definitely noticeable. Like, just like the sheer first party strength there is
God of War Ragnarok, the second best selling PlayStation game after only 7.5 weeks, I think, on the market, and number 3 overall, which is
wild.
Yeah.
I mean, they know what they're doing on some level for sure. I think I will say, man, it is getting a little tiring to see just Call of Duty always there. That is kind of like
speaks, man. I guess.
Yeah, I know.
It doesn't bother me seeing it there, Chris. It bothers me seeing it there when it's been on sale for 6 weeks. It's like it's not outselling other games. It is obliterating them. Just absolutely no prayer. I mean, it does reinforce kind of what what Sony's saying in their endless litigious shit situation with Microsoft and Activision Blizzard, where this game is just so dominant that it truly doesn't matter. But they should be pretty impressed that they got a War Ragnarok coming in where it came in, slotting in the top 5 after only 7 weeks on 2 platforms
it's pretty crazy.
Yeah, it's really impressive. And it shows, I was saying this in Discord, on our Discord, and that's one of the perks you get for joining us on Patreon. If you want to come into our Discord, there's almost 6,000 of you there now hanging out with us on Discord. And I post in our Sacred Symbols channel once in a while. And when I was doing research for the episode, I cut out the top 10 for Microsoft and the top 10 for Sony. And the top 10 games on NPD for Microsoft were Call of Duty games. And that to me says that they're not selling games over there. One first party game, Forza at number 9, I think it was. It's just and Sony is kind of in the middle where Nintendo is the other extreme. It's not good. Seeing God of War at that number showed me people still will buy games in large numbers. If the games are good, have hype, get good critical reception, people are excited about them. And that on the other hand, in the competing ecosystem, it's clear that games aren't selling. Like it's so much less interesting. In other words, you know what I mean? It's Call of Duty and the sports games. I think Saints Row was on the list. It's like, oh, holy moly, man! It's a totally different scene. And so I think that if I were Sony, I would look at those God of War Ragnarok numbers, buttressed by strong performance by Horizon, Gran Turismo 7, strong performance, Miles Morales, which they paid for in 20 and we're done paying for in 2020, still making hand and fist money over that as well. And MLB The Show doing really well. And by the way, MLB The Show's performance on NPD does not count its sales on Switch and Xbox at all, or Game Pass performance. So it's only its performance on PlayStation, which is very, very interesting, and unless bought physically. And finally, number 5, in addition to new NPD data, the PlayStation blog has also released data for the 2022 calendar year, showcasing the biggest digitally purchased and downloaded games on both PS4 and PS5. On PlayStation 5 in the US and Canada, the top 5 best-selling games via PSN for the year were Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2, God of War Ragnarok, NBA 2K23, Elden Ring, and Madden NFL 23. Other notable games include Horizon Forbidden West at 8, Gran Turismo 7 at 9, Dying Light 2 at 10, MLB The Show 22 at 11, Cyberpunk 2077 at 12, Lego Star Wars The Skywalker Saga at 13, Miles Morales at 14, Gotham Knights at 17, Sifu at 18, and Stray at 20. The top 5 games for 2022 on PS4 via PSN were similar, though not identical. Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2, Grand Theft Auto 5, Minecraft, Elden Ring, and NBA 2K23. Other notable games on that list include God of War Ragnarok at 9, MLB The Show 22 at 11, The Last of Us Part 2 at 12, Horizon Forbidden West at 13, and Dying Light 2 at 18. Beat Saber was the year's most popular PSVR game, while Fall Guys was the most popular free-to-play game, followed by Fortnite, Warzone, Multiverses, and Overwatch 2. I was surprised by that, and that Fall Guys stat was true in Europe, too. It was not only here in North America. I saw your eyes light up, Dustin. What do you think of that?
That's just shocking to me that it was more popular than Fortnite. I wonder by what parameter.
Yeah, I don't know.
Though.
It's unclear. They don't say.
Yeah. Which that's another, Epic bought them, right? So Epic's got, man, they obviously Fortnite, huge, somewhat, it feels like an accidental success for them, but they also have Fall Guys, which is claiming here the most popular free to play game on PlayStation, and they also have Rocket League. So Ubisoft just cries when they even think.
Yeah, these were wise
about
investments.
Epic Games.
Wise investments on their part over there. I'm going to be interested to see what this list in a year from now, because we'll have really good PS5 numbers with a bunch of different games and PSVR 2 as well in the mix.
Yeah. Right.
All right, my friends, let's get into listener inquiries. This episode's going pretty quick. This might be one of the shortest episodes we've done in a while. Well, maybe it won't be one by the time we're done with this. I have no idea. We already did 2 of the 6 questions, comments, concerns, thoughts, and ideas for the uninitiated. We solicit these inquiries on Patreon in the weekly thread. I publish it on Wednesday. I delete it on Thursday, so you don't waste your time writing into things that we're not going to use. A bunch of you respond. I try to work them into the show as best I can, and the ones that I like but we can't quite fit in, I put them here at the end. So let's start with our friend Turd Ferguson. Hey, CDC. Do you expect Sony to make any more studio acquisitions in 2023? Or do you think this is it for a while? Is there a studio out there that you think Sony could be keeping an eye on? Personally, I think People Can Fly could be a target. Poland is a hotbed for game devs, and Sony would be wise to have a presence there. Plus, People Can Fly has experience in making live service games. I don't think People Can Fly is a good target simply because they're so big. I don't think that if Sony bought them, that would be Sony's biggest headcount studio. I just don't think that they would be interested in absorbing all that cost. But I like where your head's at. The rumors indicate that People Can Fly is working on a second-party PlayStation game. We don't know if that's true or not. It could be called Project Red. We'll find out. Could be a sci-fi third-person shooter. Again, we will find out. Chris, do you think Sony will make any more moves this year, or do you think they're kind of going to stand pat?
I feel like with all of the stuff going on with Microsoft and the Activision Blizzard situation being prolonged even further, potentially even maybe even extending into next year. I mean, it's such a mess because I think they're not really going to actually hear anything or they're not actually going to be reaching any real critical decision making until like late August, probably something like that. I have a feeling that probably eases the tension on Sony a little bit in the sense that they don't necessarily have to step on the gas. It's a lot of expenditure to just go out and acquire studios, especially if there's no real reason to. And if Microsoft is in a position where they're kind of in the middle of fighting for this one acquisition, they're not really in a position to acquire anything else, which means, I don't know, in my opinion, I just feel like it's a pretty good time for Sony to just kind of stay still, work on whatever it is they're working on. If they need to maybe build a new studio, maybe do something like that, or maybe like acquire some like support team, something like, I feel like the next Sony acquisition is probably going to be something along the lines of like a Nixus or something like that. Like not necessarily something like massive. They're not going to acquire like something like People Can Fly. I feel like it's going to be like a largely uninteresting acquisition, at least to like the public. That's kind of what I imagine this year is going to be. I don't think there's going to be a lot of acquisition happening.
Yeah, I agree with you in the sense that Sony's got to play it, in my opinion, optically, Sony has to play it very carefully.
Yeah,
because I don't think it's a big deal because they can be like, what the Bungie thing. It's like, are you kidding? No one even bothered to try to draw comparisons between that. Not that there was really a lot of problems at that point anyway, but I don't think they can get into the publisher buying game and not look hypocritical, even if it's a fraction of the cost. I mean, there's just no deal they can make that's anywhere near as big as Activision. And that could be their argument. But I think that they'll realize it may be wiser for them to just stand pat. And Dustin, I'll throw it over to you. I feel like Sony has sufficient resources. We're going to talk about Microsoft in a minute, but I think there's an example with Microsoft's first party of it's like, well, okay, they have all these resources. They have no games coming out. I mean, there's virtually nothing to speak of over these last few years. So having more resources doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get more games. Using the resources you have wisely and finding those windows to release high quality games is probably more important. So, and I've always been anti-acquisition, so it kind of fits within my philosophy as well. What do you think?
I think that it would be in their best interest to, instead of, like you're saying, going in and acquiring more companies, is to continue making strategic partnerships that make sense. And I think that where there's smoke, there's fire situation is with Square Enix, specifically in that they have no games coming out on Xbox. They have a game that has a sequel to a game in Octopath Traveler 2 where the original never came out on PlayStation. And yet for some reason, this one's coming out on PlayStation. Something weird is going on with Square Enix. And I'm not saying that PlayStation is buying them, but it seems like there is something going on where either they're maybe an investment, some kind of partnership or something. And I think that makes a lot of sense with Japanese games, I think just exploding right now, being so incredibly popular. And it makes sense for the platform. It's a natural home for JRPGs and PlayStation. And right now, PlayStation doesn't have any studios making that. They totally shuttered Studio Japan. So really, their Japanese development presence is next to nothing. So if I was in charge at Sony, it would be looking towards bolstering the already established relationships in Japan, and maybe even, I don't know about mergers, but making sure those games are locked in, especially because Xbox has been more aggressive on this front. I don't know if it's an effective strategy for them. Like specifically the Persona games that came out are on Game Pass. They've done stuff with Sega for having the Yakuza games on Game Pass and stuff like that. And even Octopath Traveler, right? So I'm curious though. I think that's also sticking with partnerships and deals like that is a smarter decision, like you guys were saying, with all the Activision Blizzard shit, where they can continue to lock in exclusives. Again, this is my business hat. Continue to lock in exclusives and reasons to play on PlayStation that will not draw criticism while this deal's going on.
Yeah, the deal won't be resolved, it seems like, one way or the other until late summer at the earliest, based on these timelines with the United States government specifically. There could be concessions made before then that get the deal done, but it doesn't seem like Sony is willing to deal with Microsoft at all and feels pretty bullish and confident that this isn't going to happen. And yeah, they have to be careful about the like we've put an underline under is this idea of controversy surrounding hypocritical moves, even if they aren't truly hypocritical, because the scope is so much different. It doesn't really matter. And we see that in politics all the time. If things look similar, then they're going to be similar optically, and you want to avoid that as best you can. But I do think that Sony has totally sufficient resources to make games now, plus some second party relationships. And like you said, I'm glad you brought up Square Enix, because I find that peculiar as well. And I wonder what's going on there. And I think you're right, Dustin. I wouldn't be surprised if Sony said, like, we bought 25% of this, or we bought something of this, or whatever. They've already been doing it. They bought a piece of From Software. They bought a piece of Epic. They bought a piece of Discord. They've gone around and done this and kind of just solidified their appearance as a small-time funder of these operations, plus maybe getting a board seat and all of the rest. And you kind of grow your power like that and create relationships and things like that. So they're extracting games out of China, these random second-party games that are coming. So I think they have sufficient means, and the expansionism is just unfortunate. And I don't support it. I don't want to see it anymore. And the more, well, is this actually something that we're going to talk about? You know what? I'll save it. I'm going to save it. We'll get into the next question right now.
I want to bring up one other thing, though.
I'm sorry, please, go ahead.
About the Square Enix thing, just because I'm really intrigued by this, is that you have just as a similar example, you have Nintendo. They own a large part of Pokemon, enough that they can say, hey, if you're releasing a console game, it has to be only on Nintendo, right? I wonder if there's some world where Sony owns enough of Square Enix where they can be somewhat independent and that they can release games on mobile and PC and maybe even some stuff on Switch. But Sony says, yeah, your main console games are only coming to PlayStation. Like, how much would that have to be? And could that be an actual situation that could happen?
Yeah, I mean, it could happen. You'd have to have majority control probably to make that happen, and that could be all it takes. I don't know. There's something obviously going on, but I also draw back to what I was saying about the NPD and obvious lack of game sales on Xboxes. Square Enix could very well just be looking at it and being like, no one is buying games here. Why would we continue to put games out here? I mean, I really do think that I think that there's like some conspiratorial thinking that Sony is like so-called money hatting things. And they certainly are in the AAA space and some certain, notable indies and so on and so forth. But I actually think a lot of it is just straight up crude bean counting of these firms that have experience selling games being like, we have no reason to release a game there. I mean, if we're going to sell a few thousand copies of the game, it's literally not worth it for us to sell it there at that size. And so it could just be that simple. I would, for instance, but people argue it's a vicious cycle because, well, then people are not going to support you. It's like Crisis Core. Crisis Core is not going to sell well on Xbox, but is it not going to sell well on Xbox because Final Fantasy is dead on Xbox, or is it going to not sell well on Xbox because Square doesn't release games on there, or is it not going to sell well because Final Fantasy VII Remake's not there? I have no idea. So you can't really get accurate data. But
yeah.
So I'm just saying that I think Sony, there is some conspiratorial thinking that I think goes a little too far. I actually just think some of it is we don't feel like we need to release things there. And Square Enix might feel that way. I have no idea. It is very conspicuous because it's nothing. Like there's nothing coming. But they might make the argument the biggest games we make are all timed exclusives. Those are the games you would want and we would want to sell there, and we can't. So that's just where our hands are tied. So it could be that simple as well. But we'll see how that all goes. Good point. And thank you for writing in, Turd. Dark Rod 99 wrote in, said, "Hey CDC, hope you're doing well. I know this is a PlayStation podcast, but Microsoft had massive layoffs this week, and it affected Bethesda and 343 Studios. So what do you make of this? I must say this is kind of bizarre seeing layoffs in an industry booming with heavy opportunities to grow, and it is suffering not having enough people to do the work. Will Sony have the same fate this year? And also, do you think we will see this happening more frequently in more studios and publishers this year? Thanks for reading and have a nice day, everybody." Thank you to Dark Rod 99. I'm not so sure how much this specifically has to do with Xbox's business, if at all, compared to the enormous bloat at Microsoft. Microsoft employs a lot of people, like 200,000. And I was reading some stuff where their headcount has basically doubled in like a decade. Then it's just unwieldy business with lots of different moving parts and lots of personnel. And I think in some sense, and I've noted this when it happened, is that Twitter basically getting rid of 75 or 80% of their staff and then nothing happening. Like the company literally, anyone can say what they want. The service has been totally stable and like the core service works fine.
Oh, I mean, it's fine. Twitter is fucking borked on my end.
Oh, it has been fine for me. I mean, it's been.
I have to if I don't get DMs anymore. Like I have to refresh. I have to scroll I have to open my DMs on Twitter and scroll to the top to refresh, and then if I got a message since the last time I refreshed it, it'll pop up. It's weird shit's going on at Twitter. Like I don't think it's affecting everybody unanimously because I think it's just like the nature of these kinds of things. It's like a lot of hardware and software dependencies and all sorts of things going on in the back end. But it's Twitter is in a weird position because it's just kind of like there's definitely a lot of bloat at those places. But I also think there's probably a lot of people who are probably doing a lot more than people imagine. But I don't know. We'll see how that shakes up with Twitter.
Well, the point I was making nonetheless, whether that's true or not with
There's
Twitter,
a lot of bloat. There's a lot
is that I think this showed CEOs and C-suite people like, what is going on here? Why are we employing so many people? Your biggest expense, unless you are manufacturing like spaceships, unless you're like Boeing or something making nuclear missiles, your biggest cost is your people. Always. That's always your biggest cost. And if you can reduce that cost, that's very advantageous. If you can do it without affecting your bottom line or your core business, that's even better. And I think Microsoft employs so many people that 10,000 people being laid off is not really indicative of much more than the reality of that company employing too many people. It doesn't say anything about the Xbox brand or Microsoft's future, in my opinion. I think Microsoft's Xbox brand is not performing well. Well, I don't think it's up to snuff. I think it's peculiar that you would lay people off at Bethesda and 343, although I think 343 is just a totally botched studio at this point. I wouldn't be surprised if they just shut that whole place down. But I just wanted to be clear about that. I don't know how much you can read into it. Because when you employ 200,000 people and then you employ 190,000 people, I don't know that it's that different. But that's just, and obviously my best to everyone that lost their job. But I think that makes sense to everyone. I don't think you should be so hard on Microsoft over this. I think it's just the economic realities of the situation. But Chris, I think people are really eager to hear from you, especially because of 343 losing its leadership and getting some people laid off. I mean, I've said this in the past, and it's a little flip, but I think it's time to shut that place down. You just shut it down. Take Halo, put it on ice for a little while, and then give it to id. I don't know, someone else.
Anybody else. Yeah. Anybody else, really. Like, I do think it's at a point where it's like, look, when the layoffs are bad, obviously. I don't root for anybody losing their jobs, especially in a situation like this where it's just like a really bad economic situation. It's like, it's, you know, best wishes to everybody who's affected by this. But 343 is just not it, man. Like, they just can't do it. Joe Staten, who is the head of creative there, who was put in to kind of steer the ship and right the ship, is that was a big deal. But he's back at Microsoft Publishing now, so in my opinion, it's just gone. It's like it's dead. Like I for me personally, I don't give a shit. Like it's over. It's fine. Like, things don't need to continue forever. Like I wish more things would just stop. You know what I mean? Like, I'm so sick of things like being like existing past their prime and just they end up just Weekend at Bernie'd around for 12 years by just random people. It's like, hey, look, it's me, it's Halo. Remember me? It's like, yeah. What? Go to bed. Go to bed, Grandpa. You're sick.
It does kind of reinforce PlayStation's approach, doesn't it? So like, they do put things away. They do that.
Yeah,
right?
and it's not to say that they can't bring them back. Obviously, God of War is a great example, right? But like, you got to put it on ice for a while. You know, you got to allow people to miss it. In my opinion, you know, 343. I don't think they should be just like completely shut down. I think they still serve a pretty good purpose, specifically with the collection. The collection is great. I played it yesterday. It's wonderful, and I think that's something that, you know, if Microsoft honors its IP in any real way, they would be wise to turn 343 into a kind of into a Master Chief Collection support studio. That's what I would do at this point, because that game's great. It's wonderful. It's a great value, and so why not support that for as long as you possibly can? Put Halo as a mainstay IP on ice for many years. I would say I'd say 7 minimum. Like, let it really take a break. And then in 7 years' time, if some studio has a good idea, bring it out again. But I don't think it should be 343 doing it. I think it should be anybody else.
Yeah, not
necessarily because I think 343 is incapable of making a good game. I actually think like every game they've made in some ways have actually been like great. I think Halo 4 has some aspects of being great. I think 5 is a great multiplayer experience. It's just not what Halo's supposed to be. And Infinite is wonderful. It is. It's a really cool fucking game. But I just feel like at this point, I would rather some different studio try something like really, really bonkers new and different with it, to the point where it's almost like unrecognizable, than watch a studio fail over and over again to really capture what people love about it. Because there's attempts made of like, oh, okay, we want to capture what's special about it. We want to bring it forward, right? And they just can't do it. And if they can't do it, if the studio built from the ground up with the sole purpose of doing that for this franchise can't do it, then fucking give it to Bethesda and let them make an RPG out of it.
Oh, that would be interesting.
You know what? Like, why not? Like, what? Like, why not just do a complete reboot of every, like, fundamentally, like, restructure it, like, turn it into a third-person shooter. There's a million things you can do with it at this point that I think most people would be fine with, because the collection is right there. There's some of the most revered games of all time. Those are not going away. They're well supported. There are people recently playing. You know, there are more people playing the Master Chief Collection than there are playing Halo Infinite sometimes, which is crazy. Those are 10-plus-year-old games, some of them. And that's happening because those games are really, really fucking good, and they stand the test of time, and you don't really need any more. We already got them. We got the golden eggs already. We don't need any more. So take a break for a long time, come back with something fucking wildly weird and different, and let a different studio make their mark on it. I think that'd be cool.
Well, I established in my lead-in that I think that the economic troubles that are just generalized don't say much about Microsoft, and that Microsoft is bloated, and that this isn't the end of all things for them, and these layoffs happen. Because I want to be fair. I just think that people can't categorize them like that. However, and Dustin, I'll kick it over to you. I do think it's a bad sign for your culture, and this is what I said on Discord that I think some of our listeners were upset. I was like, Xbox's culture is kind of broken, because one thing is true. If Sony, and I'm just using that as an example, was like, we have to cut some heads, we have to cut down several thousand people, I'm not so sure any of them are coming from Naughty Dog. I'm not so sure any of those heads are coming from Sucker Punch. I'm not so sure any of those heads are coming. They would go to the weakest places and remove headcount where they're least valuable, even if it's not your fault necessarily, like your group's fault, and it's just the reality of the situation. But they went to 343. Now, these layoffs could have been in other places. I know that there were layoffs at Bethesda in that family, but Microsoft owns like 24 plus other studios. And I wasn't hearing about really any major head reductions at any of those other places. They went to 343. And I think that speaks badly about the culture, because they are supposed to be the central studio. Shepherding the fundamentally most important IP that they've ever had. And they failed to do it. I mean, they did fail. I do believe that the new games found their way and are good, and people are a little hard on them. I think that that's probably true. But I look at stuff like this and I just wonder why anyone would be excited about the prospect of Activision Blizzard being folded into this mess. You know, what about your game culture indicates that would be a positive thing?
Yeah.
And that to me is the biggest concern. So when I look at it from the outside, I'm like, okay, it probably has nothing much to do with Xbox that this happened. And it's probably nothing to do with them really. But Microsoft went to all the different groups' heads and were like, you guys got to reduce X amount of people, X amount of people, X amount of people, X amount of people. And so Phil Spencer and his people went to their groups and they were like, we're cutting the people from 343. Does that mean anything to you, Dustin?
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I think you have a good point about it's not necessarily indicative of Xbox, but it does just make me think overall. You were talking about the culture, and I really wonder if at this point, if questions are being raised about Phil Spencer, and how some of these projects have gone off or are currently going off, right? Like, look at this. Halo. This seems like the easiest home run ever, right? Or it should be your biggest IP. You instantly have eyes on the project. And just to see this game go down the way it did, which is very disappointing as a big fan of Halo, sucks. Stuff like The Initiative and Perfect Dark. Like, what happened? And now it sounds like Fable might be in trouble. Where's that game? Over and over and over again.
How can it be? How can it be?
And I understand it's a tender time if you're really invested in that ecosystem right now, because there's a potential. They're on the verge of potential really, really great games. And I think that's awesome. Games I'm very excited about. Starfield, Redfall, all really, really exciting games that I hope are great. But something clearly is wrong. Clearly.
Yeah.
I agree. I mean, that's what I'm saying is like, how can you just be, what is happening? It doesn't make any sense that, and this is why I wonder, this is why I'm just so perplexed. Like why is everyone so on that side so excited about absorbing another publisher and more developers into this mess? The structure doesn't work. And now you're going to make it even bigger and messier. And that's going to somehow fix it. I wonder who is responsible for this over there.
I don't know. It's a wild. It is a truly, truly wild like fall from grace. You know what I mean? Like, because I've been kind of delving back into the late to mid 2000s catalog of games, right? Into the 360 catalog, and I'm just like, I'm looking at all the, like, Gears of War 2 is fucking fantastic, and Halo 3 is fantastic.
Yeah, Gears of War 2 is
and
fucking fantastic.
And Fable 2 is wonderful, and like all of these titles, and like Mass Effect and BioShock were exclusive games at that time. That's crazy. Understand? Mass Effect and BioShock were Xbox 360 exclusives at that time. That is nuts. And then you compare it to now, and it's like, even just like the Xbox One generation before this one, it's just like, what the fuck happened? They clearly understood what to do for a hot minute. Like, they understood for a good 5 years. They really got it. Like, they really understood how to get this machine working. And they just forgot, I guess. Like, I really, it is truly baffling that Fable could be in trouble at all. Again, I know that there's some like consternation about how accurate that is. We don't know really anything, but
it was announced a long time ago.
Yeah, it was announced a long time ago, and I heard people being like, "Well, it's just 3 years ago," and it's like, dude, we used to get games. If a game came out 3 years ago, we used to get one now. We used to get the next one by now. Like, what are you announcing games 3 years before you're ready to launch, or before you're ready to even start talking about it?
Krafton spent $160 million on the Callisto Protocol in 3 years.
Dude, it really Perfect Dark should not be in trouble. Halo should not be in trouble. I don't know if Gears of War is in trouble. I think Gears of War is actually probably
the Coalition seems fine to me. I don't know.
Yeah, I actually really like Gears 5, and that DLC is actually fucking great. So it's kind of crazy to me that they ended up being like their games have changed arguably the least, which is kind of, I don't want to say that it means anything, but I think I don't know. It's just a really confusing situation over there. They really got to get their shit together. I don't know what's taking so long. I do think Phil Spencer needs to be fucking, like, observed in some way. I don't think it's necessarily all his fault. I do think Don Mattrick I do think Don Mattrick is such a wild nuclear bomb that went off there that, like, I do think his decisions are still having impacts to this day. Like, it is crazy how damaged, like, Don Mattrick seems to be like the looming specter of death. No matter where he goes, he just goes to a company and it fucking dies immediately. Microsoft was just so big that it was able to withstand him. But even so, like, the proof's in the pudding, and like, Phil Spencer's been at the helm for a while now, and we don't really have much to show for it. So, like, I don't know. I like Xbox. I like that Xbox. I like the ecosystem. There's some games over there that I really like. Sea of Thieves, I think, is fucking wonderful. But, like, I don't know, man. They really got to shape up. If Starfield isn't good, and if Redfall isn't good, then it's fucking over, man.
Well, let me ask you this, Chris, because I mean, this is as an outsider looking in, and I talked to Micah about Micah's an Xbox first gamer, so she's always playing, and I always see her, and we talk about these things. But what does it mean? Like, what is the Xbox ecosystem? What does it mean to be in that ecosystem? In other words, you were saying, like, I like that. You were saying you like it there, and you brought up Sea of Thieves, but what does it mean to be there anymore? Because I feel like at one time it meant something. Like, yeah. I know what it meant to be an Xbox gamer in the Xbox 360 era, and it was like what you were saying. I don't know what. I think I said this on the show a few weeks ago. People say, like, I'm very much focused on PlayStation, which I am. But the honest, real truth is, I don't even know what I could be missing over there. When you look at just the games that are not available on PlayStation, which are very few and far between, it's like, I don't know what it means to be over there anymore. And
yeah,
it doesn't seem like I'm missing anything, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah, I mean, I think I don't know. I think for me, it is more of a, and it really is a lot to do with the way that PlayStation has kind of conducted themselves. They've been making great games, no doubt, but they've also been making games that are very, 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 very comparable to one another. They definitely have a niche. They definitely have like a genre that they nail, and in our experience, I don't even think it's necessarily all that controversial to say that they don't really delve outside of that genre all too often. Like, every now and again you have Ratchet and Clank, but it's actually an example of something that Microsoft would do. Actually, it's just like an old kind of series that's kind of continuing because people like it, and that's a solid game too. Spider-Man is arguably different as well, but that third person kind of over the shoulder, dramatic, like, gritty, somber action title is pretty pretty hammered into the PlayStation identity at this point. And so when you go over to the Xbox ecosystem and you have something like Pentiment and you have Sea of Thieves and you have like these like just bizarre games and even obviously with acquisitions like stuff like specifically like with Obsidian and just the promise of what the Outer Worlds could be again if they did it again, or what the premise of an Obsidian-led Skyrim type game like Avowed could be. Like that's interesting, and it's different, and it's a different flavor. Psychonauts is a good example too. Like just the fact that they're in that family. There's more of a variety, and it's more scattershot. There's a pretty good chance that years will go by and something that you're interested in doesn't even come along. But it is so weird over there. It's just like Sea of Thieves is fucking weird. And arguably by itself, if you play the game alone, it sucks. But at the same time, it's kind of like playing Monopoly by yourself sucks. You know what I mean? Where it's like you wouldn't call Monopoly a bad game just because it sucks to play alone. And I feel like that's kind of like a similar situation with a lot of stuff over there. There's a lot of multiplayer driven things. But I think it's where I go to see what weird shit is happening. The issue is that they just don't do shit enough. And when they do shit, it's usually pretty interesting. Even Halo Infinite itself, like, it's got a lot of problems, but like, people are building waffle houses. You know what I mean? It's like it's just a very bizarre environment to be a part of, and it's almost like a theme park in some way, where it's like there's designated sections, each with their own kind of like weird thing about them, and that's kind of what it is for me at the moment. Whereas PlayStation is like HBO, and then Xbox is just this weird theme park, and Nintendo is obviously like, I guess if we're to keep the analogy going, a little bit like Disney-ish,
Definitely
a little kid friendly, but like that's kind of how I view it right now. Very, very different identity than it used to have in the heyday. I think that 360 generation was a wonderful, like a great time.
Yeah, it's a very memorable generation. I think the PS3 generation is really special too. I just think that generation, generally speaking, is really good. But yeah, that's kind of where my mind's at. I think, and Dustin, if you have anything left to say, I'll throw it over to you, but you're good. Yeah, I think that there are lessons to be learned here. I know people like to bust my balls, but I think part of Microsoft's problem is they just absorbed things without thinking about how it fit into their culture. And the organic nature of learning to work with teams before you buy them, so you know what you're buying. Like you actually know. There's no doubt that In Exile can make sense with Xbox. There's no doubt that Ninja Theory can make sense with Xbox. But what was the driving motivator that made you feel like it all would work in sync? Because right now we haven't seen much of anything from those deals that are consequential to the makeup of Xbox's identity. And I think that Hellblade game is especially important to them, I think, because it's kind of like their Naughty Dog game.
Yeah, where the hell is that, by the way?
I think that my assumption about that game is that game has such high expectations to meet that bar that it really never has been met by any other studio, that they got to do it right and can't come out until it's right, or people are really going to pick it apart. That's always been my assumption, because they're really banking on that cinematic nature.
But it's been a minute.
No, totally. It has been a minute.
Yeah.
I would assume but this is what I'm saying, right? Like, did Phil Spencer and others get involved in these deals in 2018? And then they're like, and in their minds, like, Ninja Theory won't have a game out by 2023. Like, that was the part of the deal. That was part of the plan the whole time. If so, why? That's why I think that busting balls over this idea of organic acquisition is so stupid and shows such an ignorance of how people don't understand how business structure works and how creative families work, and why buying Housemarque made a lot of sense, or buying Insomniac made a lot of sense. But buying a studio buying a team like Bungie didn't make a lot of sense, which is why they were kept totally separate. And Sony wisely, in my opinion, is just siphoning the knowledge from them while just being like, you can do whatever you want. We just need access to your knowledge and your tools. And so I think that there's some lessons to be learned here. And I also think that the reliance we're talking about 343 and Halo, it's just a bad idea to beat anything into the ground. And I say that over and over again. I'm fearful of what it means to overstay your welcome with any specific IP. and we yearn, right, Chris? Like we talk about Killzone and Resistance, and part of me is like, well, maybe we're learning what would have happened to Killzone and Resistance if they kept going, which was just a dead end, as opposed to just leaving you wanting more and maybe rebooting it in the future.
Well,
I just think it's a weird. I just think it's a very weird thing to the culture of Xbox to let that happen to that game and that team. It's not In Exile and Wasteland. It's not, Undead Labs. It's 343 and Halo, and they let them decay like that. And I just think it's something's wrong. Like, who is going to be held to account for that? That's what I'm kind of curious about.
The first sign was that they named the studio after the villain. That is that is the first sign that something might not have been correct.
Just naming it after anything from the game, I think, was stupid because it tied them to it forever.
That's fine.
All right. Well, we had another technical issue. It's unclear if any of that got captured. I don't know, but
we got
Chris's camera just shut down like it was being overridden by an alien. Or something. It was weird. And there was a message that popped up.
What the hell were we talking about?
We're talking about Halo and 343. It's time. That was probably them being like, this is a PlayStation podcast. Time to move on.
That was Microsoft jumping in.
Yeah. They're like, that's enough.
Oh yeah, we were talking about the naming of the studio after the
right. That's right. That's what it was. Okay. And I know they did that with Coalition, by the way, too. But
yeah, but the Coalition is at least named after like the good side.
Yeah,
it would be like, and now like Gears of War 6 by developers The Locust Horde.
The Locust Horde, dude. That would have actually been the Locust Horde is a fucking awesome name.
Yeah, you're kind of right. Fuck me.
All right. Shout out to Gears, by the way. I like Gears.
It's great.
Dennis Lovgren wrote in and said, "Hey CDC, what's up with all the games having RPG elements nowadays? This is what you were talking about earlier. God, I should have gotten this in too when we were talking about
Dang.
I'm out of it today. I really do not like this shit. I think RPGs have a place, usually in its own corner, where games are made to be RPGs. In most games with RPG elements, it's just meaningless loops of numbers on the screen getting bigger and fancy effects that give you loads of dopamine when you do something. Ultimately, this results in not much of an impact on the actual play experience, except spending a significant percentage of your playtime in menus, speccing your character to suit your play style. Maybe it's just me. I am a game designer." And he says, "Seeing through the loads of garbage because I know how it works. I just don't want to do all this busy work in every game I play. Who is asking for this? Please stop. Do you guys agree? I know there have been conversations on the show in regarding to God of War and Gotham Knights. Also saw Chris talking about it on Twitter in regard to Suicide Squad. Thanks for letting me rant about the thing I hate most about modern video games. Keep up the good work, guys. Constellation is great." Thank you, Dennis, for writing in. I don't know. I personally like RPG elements. I don't think that they belong in everything, but I find them typically very engaging. So I don't want to see RPG elements in Uncharted.
Right.
In God of War, I found it less offensive. In Horizon, they just made the whole game like that. So it was like that from the very beginning. In Spider-Man, you have a little bit of that kind of stuff. I like upgrade trees and all that. I don't know. I dig it. It's a little bit of agency. It's certainly, I mean, Dennis, and you know this as a game designer, I mean, certainly this stuff is meant to slow you down. I mean, everything that you're supposed to be doing in a game, whether you're solving a puzzle, equipping stuff on yourself, everything is made to slow you down so that you don't go as fast, so that you spend more time with the game. I mean, it is certainly that simple. I always think in playing Evil West, it's so funny. It's not a immensely well-made game, and you're in these areas and you're just going around like shooting a chain, and then you climb up the chain and turn around, shoot another chain, and then you climb back down the chain and climb up another chain and shoot the chain. It's like they designed this so for 10 minutes they can add 10 minutes to the game time, and it's no more simple. It's no more simple than that. So, talk to me about this.
I mean, I feel like I love RPG elements in RPGs. And I like, I like some RPG light stuff. I think it's like upgrade trees in like Spider-Man games. That's as far as I'm willing to go. Like I like those because it's like very minimal. It's not really something that's outwardly distracting. But I do find that most of my favorite games just tend to be games that don't really bog themselves down with these things and kind of focus more on the experience of playing. You know, like even something like Breath of the Wild doesn't really have RPG elements in the way that I find like egregious. You know, like it's really just you are Link the whole time, and you find different tools, and there's a built-in control input that lets you use those tools in different ways, and there's like a physics engine at play that makes the game really interesting. But you're not like leveling Link up to unlock new abilities and shit. Like not in any real like consistent way. And the same thing is true with like, I think Shadow of the Colossus, one of my favorite games ever. Like there's no RPG elements to be fucking seen. And I just like the experience of as seamless of an experience as possible, where I'm not in the menus constantly just tweaking my character to get this perfect build. I like that sometimes. I like it in Destiny. I like it in, Mass Effect and stuff like that. But I do think people are getting a little too cheeky. I feel like a lot of people want to make RPGs, but they're too scared to do it. So they just make old games and like old style, like linear action games or like open world games. And they're like, well, I got an itch to make an RPG. So like, what if I put a fucking little experience here? And it's like, I don't think it's super necessary for a lot of things. And I find it's just very bloating a lot of the time. Like imagine if, and I also feel like it just like really inhibits a game's approachability in a lot of ways. Like I think of like Back 4 Blood, right? Which was this Left 4 Dead kind of, spiritual successor.
Yeah.
And I was really looking forward to that because what's great about Left 4 Dead is that it's just such a chill experience. You get to group up with a bunch of friends. You go into a lobby, you find weapons on the map, and you kill zombies with your friends, and you get into some sticky situations, and it's great. And I think for the most part, Back 4 Blood has that. But the issue for me is just these like weird. It's like, okay, but now you have cards, and now there's not only are there weapons, but there's attachments, and those attachments have stats, and you have to like min max and like do all this stuff. And it's like, this is not what I'm playing a Left 4 Dead game for. I am not playing a Left 4 Dead game for the experience of like really thinking about my fucking build. I'm here to kill zombies with my friends. Let me do that in as unobtrusive a way as possible. And I just feel like, I don't know, it'd be like if every time you passed Go in Monopoly, you leveled up and you got like this arbitrary card that lets you like you can go backwards actually now because you have this equipped. And like, it's just like fucking, it's fucking Monopoly. Like sometimes games designs are so pure and so good that when you add layers of complexity on it for complexity's sake, it really fucking destroys it. And that's really what I don't like about a lot of RPG elements now. I do think in stuff like God of War, I think it works fine. I do think God of War is teetering on the edge of not working though. Like stuff like armor and different armor stats. Like I couldn't give less of a shit. All the different shields that did like arbitrary things. Like you could have kept the skill tree and all that stuff and got rid of all the armor, and I would have had I probably would have had a better time, to be honest. But I'm generally in agreement with this comment.
What do you think, Dustin?
Yeah, I feel like I'm mostly in agreement with Chris, but in a slightly different way in that I'm more okay with games having experience and maybe skill trees. I understand that skill trees are a common thing in RPGs, but I'm much more hesitant to include like numeric stats in games that feel like they don't deserve them or don't need them. And Chris just mentioned God of War, and I think that that's the prime example. Also, a game like Avengers a few years ago that it's like, why am I specking out different builds on the Hulk? Does he wear a different set of pants or something? It's like games like that don't need it.
I think I saw I never played the Avengers game, so I can't speak if this is true or not, but I remember vividly seeing this video where like somebody had to equip a different chest on the Hulk.
Right.
Like someone had to equip special lungs or something. And it's just like, what the fuck is this?
Stuff like that just feels like arbitrary ways to expand the game. I don't know, to have people grind out for more equipment, make it so when you go back and redo into different areas that things scale differently. And it's funny because I obviously really like Souls games, and those are very number heavy with your different abilities and different stats for things. But what's really interesting is that From Software also made a game that doesn't have any of that stuff. With Sekiro. Sekiro doesn't have stats. It has, I guess, stats in the background where you will upgrade your sword, and then you will have a better sword, and you can choose different abilities to attach, but you're not going through and like plugging in your different stats into a website in order to figure out your build. And my point overall is that you can have a very complex game and not include a million RPG stats if your game mechanics are great, and if there's
Yeah.
different ways to customize within that. But yeah, specifically too, just thinking about God of War and the armor stuff, I'm like, man, that just, I don't know. I'm not into that at all. So I'm in agreement. We
Yeah.
don't need RPG stats and everything. Having some customization, I think, is good for players to be able to kind of tailor
Yeah.
the game into different ways to suit their play style. But we don't always need to put numbers to that.
Yeah, well said. And by the way, Dennis Lofgren, I looked you up on Moby Games. You work on Deep Rock Galactic, which
Whoa!
I hear is pretty good.
Cool.
Ben loves that game.
I really like Deep Rock Galactic. That's sick.
All right, so I'm going to skip this last question because things have happened since we started that I wanted to talk about. Specifically, the news, although unclear, the damage that Giant Bomb and GameSpot have had layoffs today. Dustin, how does that strike you? Our apologies to everyone that lost their jobs. It seems like the media is in complete meltdown at this point. There's just, it's so, when I worked in games media, there were what I would deem to be at the very least 1,000 more jobs than there are now in like heads of people at different sites, body count, not in the sexual way. So what do you make of this total truncation and seeming failure of even the major brands?
I think that it's twofold in that there's one side of it that is the economy. We were just talking about layoffs at 343 and across at Microsoft. So it makes sense that this would also apply to traditional gaming press. But I don't know. I guess the main thing I want to say is just that if you, again, are interested in doing the types of things that we do, I think that if you're trying to work at a place like this, that it's not a wise decision to put all your energy into that, because I don't know, the market on this has changed. The tastemakers no longer are attached to a brand, a corporate brand. They're attached to a YouTube channel or a podcast. And like I said, I think a lot of this is economy based right now, but it's just another sign of this downward spiral. And it sucks because I think that traditional games press can or could serve a purpose outside of what we do, but often they don't choose to do that. They just become a news aggregation of everyone quoting each other and spitting out what press releases say. And that's kind of it, which is part of the problem.
It's interesting. The masthead used to not only matter a great deal, but also carry people through their entire careers. And they were known for being at these places and shepherding work through these places. And I feel like though the entire ecosystem is kind of collapsing in on itself, as it is in many other spaces, it's not just endemic to video games. It's even in major places like politics and sports and a lot of other places. I also feel like it's a real sign of how things were done at a large scale in a completely the wrong way, and how things homogenized to where the masthead became more relevant than any of the people really working there. And then that kind of flipped, and the people working there were more important than the masthead. And when those people started to leave those places, people started going to what I would deem to kind of be shells of those old establishments, including GameSpot, including Giant Bomb, and very much including IGN. And I'm not saying that because I'm not at IGN anymore. It's just the honest answer is I don't even know who the hell works at IGN anymore, except for a couple of my friends. No one goes there for any of these different things anymore. I was there and I know how popular these different brands and individuals were, and it's just not like that anymore. Now, the popular individuals are on Twitch, they're on podcasts, they're on Patreon, whatever the case might be, and they've wisely spread out and started doing their own things. And the bad news for the people that kind of hung on, and Chris, I'll kick it over to you if you have anything to say. It's just like the shitty news is that if you've held on for this long, you've made it more and more unlikely that you'll ever be able to continue doing this on your own. When the risk was highest is when people had the highest likelihood of actually making it work, because now you're inevitably going to see a flood of people continue to come into an independent space that is already dominated by other brands, and these brands are the nouveau type brands that are not legacy brands. So it's a sad dead end, and I think a lot of people are going to be out permanently. And that's already been happening. So how do you feel about these layoffs?
I mean, it sucks, but yeah, I'm in I'm in agreement in the sense that it's very. I don't want to say it's too late because it never really is. I remember thinking before I really started kind of coming up on YouTube, like I remember thinking like, it's 2014. This site's been active since 2006. It's probably too late for anything. You know what I mean? It's so funny thinking about that now, thinking about how many people have exploded just in between that period of time and now. But, you know, I just think now is going to be a really rough time because a lot of people are going to be coming in at the same time versus I feel like earlier on there was an easier way to kind of stand out when there was just kind of less. Oh, you see my camera?
Yeah, your shit's freaking out again.
Oh,
the
that's
aliens
dope.
are coming
I'm being
back.
hacked.
Dude, this is cyberpunk or straight up.
That doesn't even look like a real. You know what that looks like an effect that I would edit onto it.
Yeah,
we're being hacked.
That's kind of cool looking.
Say something sinister.
Get a mask.
We meet at dawn. No, but that was really distracting. It's. I feel bad for everybody who's laid off. I hope they land on their feet. That really derailed my train of thought.
I totally understand. We'll wrap it up. This is a sign that we've been going too far.
Yeah.
I do want to, our very best to all those that were laid off. The time for, I guess, this introspection and examination in a more deep way comes later. But there's something definitely going on with the way things have been handled, like the way people have been treated and talked about, the bullying and all of this that I think leads to, like I said, a homogenous sort of product that people become less affiliated and attached to, and they go elsewhere. And I think that, unfortunately, these are kind of the results as these layoffs trickle through media. So we wish our very best to everyone out there. And
I'm like, oh, there it goes. Whatever. I don't care. We're still recording, right?
No,
it's not.
Whatever your camera is doing shuts off Zencaster.
That's so confusing. What is
that?
Dude,
we should end the episode like that.
We should.
Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast, is a product and trademark of Last Stand Media and Colin's Last Stand LLC, and is proudly recorded in the USA. The show is conceived by, is written by, and is directed by me, Colin Moriarty. My co-hosts are Chris Raygun Maldonado and Dustin Furman. The show is produced by executive producer Dustin Furman. It's edited by associate producer Ben Smith. All of Last Stand's theme music is by my best friend, Ramon Narvaez. As you know, all of Last Stand's shows, including Sacred Symbols, are fan-funded on Patreon at patreon.com/laststandmedia. The following names are at the producer level on Patreon, our highest tier, and we're grateful for your thoughtful and kind contributions to our independent endeavor. Thank you.